the webinar.
We good to start?
Yep, all set to go.
Hey everyone, welcome to this tonight's meeting. We're finally reached the point where we can discuss proposals for recommendations and vote on them. I'm really excited. I think we've done a lot of great work, and really excited to see how it all sort of works out tonight. So I guess my thought is, and we can do this however you guys want, but my thought is we could take the proposals in the Google Docs sort of one at a time, if that works for everybody. If there's another way you guys want to do it, we can discuss that. And then we could sort of, whoever proposed them will get the floor first. They could sort of say why they support these, why they're proposing it. We could discuss it and then vote on each one. Does that make sense? Perfect. Okay, so let me open.
Adam, just make sure that under Robert's rule, somebody has to move that this proposal comes to the floor.
Okay,
right.
cool.
So it's I move that this proposal come to the floor. It's got to be seconded, and then it'll be discussed. Okay, let's do it right.
Cool. So do you have the Google Doc open in front of you right now? Because I don't think I'm allowed to, under Robert's rules, I don't think the chair is allowed to make motions.
Well, I have it open.
Okay.
Yeah. So the people who, like, I think, I don't know if Stacie or Brian or Brendan are the first ones in that Google Doc. So maybe we can go by, either, hey, who put it down. It's just.
That makes sense. And
it could be the author, right?
Okay.
I mean, it makes sense that the author of the proposal would move to bring it to the floor, and then it would be seconded so that it could be discussed.
And can somebody sort of be in charge of just keeping track of the votes and all that?
We will have to document that. So we haven't
Yeah.
had a secretary. And what I would suggest we do is that, since this is being recorded and the chat will be part of the record keeping, that we put in the chat what the vote was.
Yeah, somebody should still write it down though.
Okay.
Just to be
So-
sure. Write it down. Thank you. Perfect. Okay, cool. So we can start. Does somebody want to make a motion to kick off the first?
All right, well, I filled out the doc first, so just for the purpose of going in order, I broke these recommendations into 4 sections, and I'll take them one at a time. And I think like 2, 3, and 4 may not require too much discussion if we agree on recommendation 1, but let me start with recommendation 1. I move that we recommend abolishing the delegate system and following the principle of one person, one vote for voting on SPJ resolutions and bylaws amendments, and permitting all SPJ members in good standing to vote remotely on bylaws and amendments.
Second.
Discussion?
So to discuss, I'm going to tell you my reasoning. So we're here to study the method by which the society conducts business and whether those methods provide equitable representation to chapters, communities, and members who are not affiliated with either. My pacing was a little strange on that. So equitable representation to the chapters, equitable representation to the communities, and equitable representation to those members who are not affiliated with either chapters or communities. So my reasoning for my recommendation, based on that task that we have been asked to do, is I don't think that the existing system guarantees equal representation. I think it leaves many members without representation because many delegate seats go unfilled, whether those are chapter delegate seats or unaffiliated regional delegate seats. I find that the current system enables one unelected person to wield as many as 10 votes, if not more, at a national convention. I find that the current system incentivizes SPJ members to quit their chapters in order to become regional delegates who have outsized influence. I find that the system fails to provide communities with delegates akin to the delegates that chapters have, and that also creates inequity between communities and chapters. And I also find that requiring anyone to cast a vote in person at a convention creates a financial barrier and other obstacles as well, including the fact that it's ableist to require somebody to get on a plane and go across the country to get to participate in our decision making.
Any other discussion? So I'd just like to say, first of all, Brendan, you have the link to the resolution,
Yes.
right? Can you send it to, that's the link you want, right, Dan?
Yeah.
Can you send it to Dan?
Yeah, I'm gonna put it in the chat.
Okay.
Um,
I'd also just like to say, you know, as we discovered earlier in this process, there was a task force designed to look at fixes to the delegate system that went 2 years. Alex Troconio was, I believe, the chair of that. Excuse me. And, you know, I've spent personally the better part of a year now looking at bylaws language on and learning about the system so we can figure out who gets to vote on bylaws language. And, you know, we spent a lot of time on it. It's been exhausting. I just don't think, I think this is the best proposal going forward. I think fixes to the delegate system have been tried before. I think no matter what, if the delegate system remains, you know, communities and chapters are still going to be fighting about or debating and arguing about whether communities should get delegate votes. I think that, you know, I don't think there's any real way to fix the regional delegate system. You know, I think that there's always going to be that incentive to abuse it, especially given how many votes that there are. And I think that we're just going to go in circles if we keep trying to fix it. I think we've already spent a lot of time on it. Quite frankly, I don't spend any more time on it. I don't think this is when any of us signed up for SPJ, I don't think this is what we imagined we would be spending our time looking at. So that's sort of why I say I'll be supporting this. Any other discussion?
Israel has his hand up.
Oh, go ahead. Israel.
Yeah, so I think for, you know, again, completely making sure that this is above board, I would recommend that we split actually recommendation 1 into 2 separate recommendations. I think what we need to do is we need to be as clear as possible, right? This is going to be a process where a list of recommendations are going to go to the board. Those recommendations are then going to be presented to the members. Simultaneously, the recommendations will go to the bylaws committee, where they will be, those recommendations will then be somehow, right, written by the bylaws committee as bylaw changes. And I think, you know, one of my biggest frustrations, and again, you know, it's a fault of mine. I approach everything from a legal perspective, right, from an attorney perspective. And what I find frustrating is that sometimes these bylaws have been written in such a way that sometimes they are vague, they are overbroad. And I think what happens is that people, whether it's by intent or by mistake, that people can then find a lot of wiggle room in these bylaws to say, you know, one person can usurp a lot of power, right? And I think going forward, I would love for the power to be diffused. And so for me, I want to make sure that the recommendations are clear, that they have that there's no, we don't understand what you're talking about. And so for me, I would say to Brendan, since this is what you're recommending, that maybe you can make recommendation 1, abolish the delegate system, right? Following the principle of one person, one vote for voting on SPJ resolutions and bylaw amendments. Then separately, right, we want to permit all SPJ members in good standing to vote remotely, because those are 2 different recommendations. So that would be my recommendation to you, Brendan, as the author of this. And then, you know, if the committee decides that that's a good thing or a bad thing. So that would be my recommendation.
I think that it would be difficult for us to go to one person, one vote and not have one person, one vote be remote. But if we want to debate that, because one person, one vote could mean just everybody has to go to the convention. And if some people agree, if some people think that's a good idea, but they don't think one person, one vote for people voting remotely is a bad idea, you know, I'm fine with splitting it up so we could debate those individually. What's the best way to revise my original motion so we could debate these as, we'll call them recommendation 1A and recommendation 1B? Or maybe that's stupid. Maybe we just renumber everything and just make it 1 and 2, and I'll renumber everything else.
Well, and that's part of the recommendation, right? Our recommendation is under our task, under our sort of the power we have as a task force, is to make the recommendations, in other words, for equity, right? And so therefore we could make a recommendation to say, we recommend X and we recommend Y, and we believe if X, then Y, right? So therefore we recommend that we abolish this.
Mm-hmm.
And we recommend that all SPJ members should be able to vote remotely. Then our recommendation would be, and we believe that one should go with the other. The bylaws committee will be in charge of drafting the language in the bylaws way. And then when it's presented to the members, to the delegate members in the fall, then, you know, hopefully the bylaws, if they do it right, they would say, we need to vote on this, and if this, then this. But again, Bob Ecker is very active right now, so he's making the comment that one member vote has always allowed remote voting to elect candidates. Okay, but that's not what we're talking about, right? We're talking about the delegate system, and we're talking about bylaw amendments at the floor.
Right.
So
And the bylaws.
So when you're saying, so why assume it does not mean the same thing for this? For the very reason that I just said, Bob, that as attorneys, we know exactly what language to draft, but we need to make it clear that every layman should be able to understand what we're talking about.
So,
Right.
And the bylaws specifically state right now that you have to be, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that you have to be in attendance at the convention. So making sure that we're clear that we want to change that.
That's correct. Right. That we should permit remote voting on these issues. So, you know, right now the way we're talking about it, that would be almost 3 changes to the current bylaw system.
Yeah. Stacie has her hand up.
I was just gonna give my opposition to it and why. I don't know if we're okay with that. To do that. Okay, let me lower my hand. I wrote it in here. I don't know if everybody's read it, which is, I didn't know if I'd really be going through this or we're just kind of talking. And I'm going to talk it since this is being recorded. I am going to read some of this just to collect my thoughts. But I still strongly believe that the delegate system is the path to more engagement. I have sat in on the end of the year meetings. I'm one of the people in, you know, watching all the delegates vote on these matters. I saw everything that went on, watched it live as it was happening at last year's convention. I mean, virtually. I know there was a lot of like kind of craziness, which is in a good way, right? And I love that energy. I think that adds value. Period. I think that adds value. I think it harnesses energy and engagement. I do not think that the one person, one vote system has the capacity to do that at all, really. I think you will create, yep, I've got an equal voice now, but what does that mean, right? I think that delegates, we clearly know that there are some members of SPJ who are much more involved without really ever having a voice, and are still really involved, or they do have a voice through a delegate or as a delegate. And then there are some members who might show up once every 5 years to a convention and get involved, and then they disappear again, which is fine. And there's all types of members. But keeping delegates are the ones who drive this organization, I feel. Right, along with committee members, you know, there's that group, that inner circle, you know, not to be exclusive. We'd like to bring more people into the inner circle and have them rotate in and out. But they are the ones, I think, who will dig into the weeds, who will do what we're doing right now, who will do the stuff that has to be done to run an organization and to run it successfully. And I think they feel empowered and important. And I think they have the right to feel that way. I think they should feel that way. That's great that they feel that way. And I think that encourages even more engagement. I think that encourages the people who show up at conferences, the delegates who do show up. I know not every delegate does. That has nothing to do with this. But the delegates who do show up, I think do so because they feel like they're contributing to the process. They are part of the process. They're making things happen. They've got a voice. They're voting on things. And if that is taken away, I do think we should expect lower attendance. I think that is an inevitable outcome of this.
Can I ask, how is that, Stacie? I'd be interested to know more about what you just said. Would you believe that if the delegate system is removed as a power base, that then that will lead to fewer people?
I think that, and it might not be huge numbers, but we don't necessarily have huge numbers that show up at the conference every year. But I think that some of the delegates who show up do so because they're a delegate and for no other reason. I actually know that one chapter sends a delegate because we have to send a delegate for a voice, and no way would someone from our chapter, this was a chapter I was president of a couple of years ago, no way would someone have gone. I know that, we've had the discussion. So I do know that also as a freelance community member or a vice chair, I make it a point to show up. Once I went to a conference and didn't go to one session, I organized all sorts of sessions and put them on within the freelance community and worked my butt off and didn't see one session. I didn't have time for it. I would not do that if I wasn't in the community, in the freelance community. And I suspect there are many delegates who feel the same way, or because it is a cost, right? That's just talking about that kind of stuff. It's a cost. And I think you're maybe more willing to put that when you've got you're a delegate on your resume, when you've got that kind of stuff and you can talk to people and your colleagues outside of the organization, talk to them about what you do and how involved you are. That gives you some clout, whether it's real or not. I think that does. I think that encourages people to go, even when they might not. I know that I have gone as the vice chair of the freelance community in years that I would not. I'm actually going this year on my birthday. I don't want to go on October 27th. That's my birthday. I'm going to go on October 27th. If the freelance community dissipated and I wasn't a delegate, I'd probably choose my birthday, right? Like, I just feel like that's something that should be expected. Clearly, we're still going to have people show up, but I think we need to consider that.
Stacie, we're going to take you to the Hawk and Dove to celebrate your birthday, by the way. Just let's make sure that we all go to Hawk and Dove on the hill.
There's a much better whiskey bar just across the street from the hotel.
Hey, Stacie may be a tequila person. Don't say whiskey.
There's a tequila bar half a block down.
Stacie does not drink alcohol.
There you go. So you know what? She needs good tea. Do you
Bloody Gallery Place. There's a bar for everything.
I do like good non-alcoholic cocktails though. Mocktails.
Right, there you go.
Definitely have something to look forward to now.
So in addition to all of this, this is a major change to SPJ's governance. This is a huge seismic shift, and I think we all know that. And for people who've been involved in the organization know that. For people who are newer to the organization and just kind of getting into the governance of it now may not understand what a seismic shift this is. And I think that kind of overhaul, to do that this year in the next few months, seems pretty disruptive to be considered healthy. And then we need to consider how the board will receive this. This could be too drastic for the board. They could say, whoa, we didn't expect this. They might be expecting this, but then when they all start talking about it, like, oh wait, maybe we didn't think this through, or maybe we didn't think about this, or you know, they might be like, yeah, this is too big. Let's not do this yet, or let's push back. Let's maybe do some of it. I just feel like that needs to be considered also. So I'm hoping we can propose at least more than one recommendation. And I think that's it. I think that's my opposition to it. I totally understand everybody's points about being for it. And I think if we were a brand new organization setting up the system, I probably would be for a one member, one vote, but we're not. We have to go, I mean, I have to consider what's been done in the past within this organization and how it will affect it now, where the delegates stand now, how engaged they are, how not they will, or how not they will be in the future if this happens, and then where we're going next.
I think Ashanti had her hand up next.
Yeah, I wanted to, you know, while I understand what Stacie is saying, I would offer that NABJ, NAHJ, IRE, they all have significant participation in their conventions every year, and none of those organizations have delegate systems. They don't. People attend for the programming, and if we didn't have a delegate system, that is time that we wouldn't be spending doing other things, and we could focus more on having more programming for our members, which I think, to be honest with you, that's the main reason why a lot of people join journalism organizations. They're looking for programming, they're looking for workshops, they're looking for sessions to make themselves better, they're looking for ways to get new job opportunities. And so I would argue that I don't think getting rid of the delegate system, I think you have to almost change your perspective on this. I think we would potentially be attracting members who were turned off from that part of the convention. You know, I mentioned last meeting, some of my board members, it was not a badge of honor to be a delegate. It was really a task that they did not want to do because of the delegate system. It felt rigged. And I had a board member leave because she did not at all understand or appreciate what happened with the delegate system and the delegate meeting when she was involved in the last convention. So I would argue that we may actually increase attendance to the conventions if we're able to focus more on additional programming and less on all of the work that has to be done around the delegate system. I would also offer that SPJ is changing. It is, as is our industry. And if we can't figure out ways to evolve both in our industry and as an organization, we're not going to be around in 5 to 10 years. We're just not. And I think part of that is sometimes making decisions to have colossal shifts that can impact the future of our membership and what that looks like. And so while I think change is maybe scary because it's the way we've always done things, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's the best way with where our organization has evolved to at this point in time. There's a big part of me that feels like we have outgrown the delegate system. And I think when it was created, maybe it was great and it was fantastic and it worked well, but I don't know that that's the case anymore. And so I would just encourage all of us to think about how our industry has evolved and how it has to, or we won't be around. And I think the same can be said for our organization. So I just wanted to offer that.
Dan?
Yeah, I mean, geez, she just took all my thunder. You know, underscore, boldface, 72 point, absolutely agree with everything you just said. More programming is what draws people to the conventions, not whether or not you're going to be a delegate and voting. It allows for more activity. And even if it's not specific programming for improving journalism, when you're going to a place like Washington or New York or Los Angeles, there are dozens of historic journalism sites in those areas where tours can be arranged so people can see the history of our industry and of our work. So there's just a whole lot more that we can do instead of having a handful of people locked up in a ballroom arguing for 5, 6, 7 hours. Evolving. The technology is allowing us now to do one person, one vote. I mean, even last year was kind of, the last 2 years was kind of dodgy, but it's so much better. I wouldn't have thought of even proposing this 5 years ago. But the technology is there now. We have stable platforms and people know how to use it. And for that matter, if you want to bring people together and do things, a chapter, there's nothing stopping a chapter from having a convention party in their chapter area and watching it together on Zoom and participating that way. You can do a local event tied to the national conference, which, you know, you get rid of all that that business meeting and turn it all over to one person, one vote. That ties people in all the way. You know, did you vote? Great. Let's go watch. You know, let's go watch this convention or this event at the convention. Anyway.
It's a very good
But
point.
again, underscore, big, bold print. I agree with everything.
Cool. It is interesting. You get to free up more time at the convention for programming or whatever else. Daniela?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, if Dan is like bolding, like making everything big, like I'm highlighting everything he said too, because I mean, I agree. Like Ashanti said earlier, I mean, I don't know of any other journalism organization that, you know, does the delegate system. And Adam, I know you've explained the delegate system when we first started this, like at least 3 or 4 times, and it was just so confusing. So like for me, just thinking of our new members, like I can't imagine having to, you know, joining this organization, joining a chapter and having to, you know, learn that system if they want to be involved. So like, I'm just in support of the one member, one vote. And like everyone else said, it takes away time from a conference. Like I personally, I go to conferences for the programming, not to sit in a boardroom and, you know, talk about stuff. Like for NHJ, when we had a couple of changes, literally I would just get an email and it was, okay, you have to turn it in by, you know, such and such time during the conference. And that was it. So I mean, I think the delegate system might have worked at one point, but I think it doesn't work for us anymore.
Cool. Anybody else have?
I guess I'll just add that, you know, that was my first convention and I just found this way that power and influence was divided among people really distasteful, and we could try to make it harder to game the system, but people will always be more clever than we are and find a way to game the system. And then some other group's going to be here 2 years from now trying to further fix the delegate system because we left out some other loophole that somebody came up with that they could use to have outsized influence over SPJ. And I really just, I don't like the tiers. I don't like that if you're new to SPJ, you're less important than the person that's been there for a while. And if you've been there for a while, it doesn't matter if 100 people disagree with you, you're still going to get your way because you've invested a lot of energy into making sure that you could exploit the system to your benefit. And no new person's going to come in and put in the energy to figure out how to exploit the system to their benefit as effectively as the person who's been doing it for 10 years. It just made me not want to participate. And I agreed to be on this committee because if the delegate system is anything like it was last year, I'm just not going to show up. And, you know, traditionally PCLI presidents are in that position for 3 years. So that's, you know, at least the next 2 years, PCLI is not going to show up. You know, you crazy people at National could just do whatever you want and we'll just go run our chapter and make it the best that we could be. And let the like 5 or 6 people that really know how the delegate system works make all the decisions, and the thousands of other SPJ members will just have to live with it.
Israel?
Yeah, and let me say this. The country needs SPJ, right? I mean, I'm not just preaching to the choir here, right? We're going to record this video, and I want to say SPJ is the only organization that cares about both the First Amendment and ethics. we're not important because we think we're important. We're important because we think democracy and the First Amendment is important. And I point always to the work of SPJ-LA and what Ashanti did in trying to protect reporters out in the field, of protecting freelancers out in the field, right? They did the work there in California. SPJ National helped them to amplify that voice, to get people to, right? That's the system that we need. We need a system where the national organization says, what do you need, communities? What do you need, chapters? Because we need to pass a federal anti-SLAPP legislation. We need to make sure that we have access to the corridors of power. We need to make sure that whether it's Republican or Democrat, it doesn't matter, right? We're supposed to hold people accountable. And if we don't take that power back to us, it's going to be taken away. And so my concern is if we spend more time worrying about who has clout, what chapter has more power, SPJ is stronger together, folks. And I just think we need to do something so that everybody is important. There's equity, there's diversity of voices, but gosh darn it, we need an organization more than ever to make sure that the First Amendment is what it is. Because if it's not, I'm just telling you, I see the horizon and it's not pretty. And so I'm like Brandon, right? I want to be able to go learn from you, learn from others. But this idea of who's got clout, who's got power, that's just shouldn't be us. We're better than that.
Dan?
Yeah. First off, it's clear this convention is still going to be under the old style. We're not making any changes for this convention. That has to, every now and then, I think we just need to underscore that with all the talk that we're trying to do about the future. But I would just move beyond what Israel was just saying, though, that the SPJ is more than just a couple of issues. We're the only journalism organization that represents people from intern to publisher. All the other journalism groups are broken into various sectors. It could be the copy editors, it could be Black journalists or Hispanic journalists, or it could be, news editors. We're the only one that covers everybody. And we're not singing that loud enough. And I think one person, one vote, I think would help push that view that we literally represent everybody in the news industry, from every walk of life and in every job in the profession.
So I know we have about an hour, so this is a great conversation. I'd like to see if somebody might call a vote for this.
I'll call the vote.
This for recommendation number 1 still?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I guess, are we going to do it the way Brendan wanted to do it? Recommendation 1A and recommendation 1B.
Well, I mean it.
Or you just want to keep it together? It's your recommendation, brother. So if you want to keep it that way, we keep it that way.
If we're gonna have an equal number of votes keeping it together than we would if we severed it, I would say let's keep it together.
Okay.
If we severed it and for some reason, we gained a vote on part 2 because we severed it, maybe we should sever it.
Well, I to be honest, I'm sorry. I just, if you're going to have one person, one vote, you have to mention, it has to be good standing and vote on by. I don't see separating them, to be quite honest.
Okay, then that's all right. Then that's fine. Then I move. So let's. So the motion has been recommendation 1 as is. There hasn't been any amendments. It's been moved to the floor for voting. Mr. Chairman, you take the roll call.
I have a question.
Yes.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that I'm clear on this. So we talked about going through each of the recommendations and discussing each one. So we did recommendation 1 and we discussed it. Are we not going to go through everything else?
No, we are. So recommendation is 1 is just to abolish the delegate system and allow remote voting. for everything.
Yeah, I understand, but are we voting on that like right now? So there's no point in me talking anymore. Like, I mean, like, I haven't talked about my recommendation. Are we voting right now for what we are recommending? Or are we just saying, oh, we like this one, let's keep it in the mix?
No, so this one we're voting on whether we're gonna recommend recommendation 1.
Okay, so we're gonna
Yeah,
then
but-
talk about recommendation 2, 3, 4, and then what Ashanti said, and then my recommendation.
Yes,
I got it. Okay.
that's the plan. I don't know, like, I know Ashanti said in the document that clarifying the language to a 60-day period, that didn't get changed in the doc, I don't think, so we might have to have an amendment to put that in when we discuss that information.
I'll
But anyways,
either revise my motion when we get to it, or
Yeah.
I'll move it and then Ashanti can move to amend it.
right,
And, I figure we'll do that live instead of trying to do it in the doc.
yeah. I mean, at this point, that's what we'd have to do. So, yeah, let's vote on recommendation 1. So how are we just gonna raise our hands? Do we want to do a roll call? Like, what do?
Let's put it on the
There's
record.
no picture from
Yeah.
Daniela, so we're gonna have to.
Yeah, if it's a roll call, if I'm recording the vote, it would help if it was a roll call versus
Yeah.
raising hands.
Okay, so you can call out everyone's name and ask how we're gonna vote, if that works.
That works. Okay, Adam Sennott,
Yes.
Stacie Overton Johnson,
No.
Dan,
Yes.
Brendan,
Yes.
Israel,
Yes.
Daniela,
Yes.
and I am also a yes. So that is 6-4, 1 opposed.
Ashanti, I love that you're from LA and that you say Israel, because you've been there. You've been to East LA, so you know exactly how it's
Yes,
said.
I also teach at a Hispanic serving institution, so yeah.
Love it, love it, love it. Thank you, Ashanti. All right, let's move to recommendation number 2, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so let me pull this back up. Does anybody have it open in front of them?
And
I have it open.
may I make a
uh,
recommendation, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Again, because I don't want for things to be left at the bottom. Can we go ahead and talk about Stacie's recommendation first before we go to another Brendan? Just to make it more equitable as far as time goes.
Sure, if everyone else is okay with that.
Fine, yeah.
So
Okay.
Stacie, do we just start talking about it, or should Stacie make a formal motion and
Stacie.
second it?
Stacie would make a formal motion. It'd be seconded, and then we can discuss on the floor.
Okay, so I just moved to make my recommendation.
Yes, ma'am.
So I move to keep the delegate system not as is and fixing the problem areas.
So in other words, are you saying that you are moving that you want, I propose we keep the opportunity for unaffiliated regional delegates, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've got more to say about this.
Okay, so I second, I
Okay.
second it.
Okay, so when Ashanti was speaking, I agree with much of what she said. I do not want to be misunderstood in that I agree with the delegate system as it's run right now. I do not. And that needs to be on record. I do not agree with the way the delegate system is currently run. I do like the delegate system. It should change. You know, from my in my perspective. So the unaffiliated regional delegates is wildly unfair. The fact that I could just send an email to be a regional delegate and an email back, yeah, you're a regional delegate now, is not professional at all. I don't like that happened. I think that you're exactly right that people game the system. I think you're 100% right, Brendan, that was not the way that should have been done. I don't agree with that, and I'm very against that. I do like the unaffiliated regional delegate system because I think there are a lot more people like me than we realize. I am nowhere near a chapter. I would like to be a regional delegate. I would be an involved regional delegate. And this is not why I'm voting for this, right? Because I'm really with the freelance community. But I think that there needs to be some requirements, right? just like a chapter president doesn't just say, hey, I want to be the chapter president. Okay, you're the chapter president. And I just kind of came up with some ideas. I didn't know how like detailed to get about this. And obviously we're not writing the language, but some of the ideas just that they have to be elected within their region. The Region 8 coordinator can see who wants to be the regional delegate in Texas and Oklahoma, right? So the Region 8 delegate puts out a vote to all the members in Texas and Oklahoma. They vote, and that's the delegate. And then maybe that they have to be a member of SPJ for X number of years. I don't even know if that's what I feel. I thought, well, I'll just throw it in there, but someone said, was it you, Israel, that just said this about how let's not give anybody who's been in here for 10 years more necessarily than somebody who's only been in for 1 year or 2 years. So if this is your first year and you're that gung-ho, then maybe that doesn't matter how many years you've been involved. And I think that the email needs to be an email needs to be sent out to query members in their respective regions to get feedback on issues they know will be voted on at the convention. There will be issues that will come up that they will not be able to query their members on, but the effort, so that there's an effort made to get consensus. And I do think that the regional delegate, if they run to be the regional delegate each year, they must have the intent. This is all in good faith, but they must have the intent to attend in person. They might not, things might come up that they can't, but they must say, yes, I'd like to be there in person. That's that part. And I propose that an SPJ community in good standing should be represented by delegates. I went back and forth on this one on how I would, thank you. I just got served dinner. Thanks. So, I went back and forth a little bit on this because right now there are the freelance community, the international community that are pretty big, right? That have a lot of members. And we talked a little bit last time about how there could be another, like there's several other communities that could be popping up, right? There could be one with, 10 members or 5 members, or hey, we want to form a community. So let's just say this and we'll get 1 delegate vote. So then I thought, well, that seems like you could game the system that way, right? Like, us, our group of 7 wants to form a community, the Taskforce community, and now we're a delegate, right? So we got to be careful with that. I understand that. And so I thought maybe like, is it a certain number of members that we should have, like 50 members or more, or 75 members or something like that? Or, at last year's convention, we did say that these communities have to do the same, be held to the same standards as chapters. We do file annual reports. We have to do all the same stuff that chapters do. So that's already in there. So that's my feeling on the communities. And then, and this is for the benefit of the chapters. I don't think that we should go any further until this issue is fixed about the lost members. I think Ashanti said she lost 100 members or something. It just seems it's just totally unacceptable. I think we need to create a system that will count and maintain an accurate number of every chapter's, whether we're one member, 1 vote. Don't you want to know? I'd like to know. I want to know who's in the freelance community. That needs to happen. And I don't know if that's separate than this, if it's part of this, but I think that a delegate system that gets an overhaul where members are accurately counted, the unaffiliated regional delegate system gets completely revamped where it's a much more fair process to get in, and a voice for the communities. Again, maybe a certain number of members in each community to be held to those same standards is called for. And that's my feeling on it. But I just wanted to make sure. So thank you, Israel, for letting me speak, because we are going to run out of time before the next few of Brendan's, because I didn't want you guys to misunderstand me. I do not think that the delegate system in its current state is working, but I do think it's worth fixing.
Is it?
Yeah. So Stacie moved and I seconded that we discuss her recommendations. I'm gonna propose. This is my read, but obviously it would need to be seconded. What I'm going to propose is that we vote on Stacie's third recommendation, which is SPJ immediately resolve the issue of lost members. I think on that one, my reading, we would have a unanimous vote on this. This is a crucial recommendation by this task force if our mandate is to have equity, that we need to make sure that the front office under the current executive director, John Schertzer, he needs to fix this. I am on the record with the task force and as a board member, right? I've been very critical of John as a manager, as an executive director. I think he's a wonderful person. As a visionary, he likes to propose a lot of different things that attract money. Good for him. At this time, we need somebody to clean our office. And so for me, this is so vital that we need to make sure that all chapters, all communities, they know exactly what we are, right? Who's our members, because we're doing a lousy job of taking care of our customers, of our members. And on the record, that pisses me off. And so what I would recommend to the committee is, can we just right now say another recommendation that this task force is making is Stacie's third recommendation? And let's vote on that. And then we can discuss, we can table Stacie's other two, and we can come back to it.
So you want to propose that as a substitute amendment or a substitute motion?
Well, it could be a substitute motion. So as a substitute motion, I move that just right now, we only vote on Stacie's fourth recommendation, which is that SPJ immediately resolves the issue of lost members. She's absolutely right. It is necessary to create a system that will accurately count and maintain each chapter's, I would add community to that, Stacie, if you will oblige. So chapters and community member database, so that chapters and communities never have to wonder how many members they have.
So, yeah, just to phrase that, instead of saying lost members, we should, I would propose that we say resolve any issues with the member and community, the chapter and community membership database.
So dramatic, though. You don't want
Just-
lost in there?
It's just very simple. It's just ensure accurate counting of members in chapters and communities, because that's been the issue. There has not been accurate.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's her recommendation. So Stacie, you do it the way you want it. I agree with you, Stacie. By saying lost members, we're sending a very clear message. I get it,
There's that.
Dan, that you're saying there's language to be had here, but I think if the chair is going to make a recommendation to the board, right, and two board members are representing here this committee, this task force, we need to make it clear to John's face, this is unacceptable, John, and we're calling it lost, not we're missing members in the database. They're lost because you're not keeping record of them in the front office. And I was on record as saying, I think when we disband the office, it's going to make things matters worse. I think I'm going to be right on that issue. And so again, Stacie, this is your recommendation. I like the word lost, but Dan's point, he's absolutely right as well.
Brendan?
I'm not sure about the Robert's Rules of Order functionality of like having a substitute motion. It's not really even an amendment to the original motion. I think we should probably have a vote on the original motion, which my understanding was not a motion to have a discussion. It was a motion to make a motion. And the motion was, I move to keep the delegate system while fixing the problem areas. If I'm understanding, Stacie, that was your motion.
Yeah.
And I think we should give it an up or down vote after we've had the adequate discussion that it deserves. So first part is on the underlying motion. I believe that the current delegate system can be tweaked. I don't think it could be fixed. It could be made harder to exploit. I don't think it can be made equitable to all members. don't want to. I want to recommend that we abolish it like we have recommended. I don't want to give the board an out to say, well, they also recommended keeping it but fixing it. I don't recommend keeping it but fixing it, even as a substitution. I think it's more clear to just tell the board what a majority of us have agreed on, and not give them a back door to ignoring the recommendation that the majority of us agreed on. On the substitute motion, if somebody wants to move that and second that, I think we should do that, but we should do it in order. We should do the motion that's on the table, and then take another motion when that's done. But
You're right.
layering motions on top of motions is hinky.
Yeah.
I think it works for amendments and cloture votes, but I don't like taking other things in the middle. Unless we really want to move to table it, then we should move to table it and do that, and then we should raise a new motion. But other than tabling and amending an underlying motion, I don't understand why we would do substitute motions.
You're right. And I pull back my substitute motion. So I apologize for that. You're right, Brendan.
And I appreciate your voice on that, Brendan. I appreciate you giving it time and discussion.
So
And also, I just want to, I don't propose keeping the delegate system without that last piece. So you know how you're talking about if this, then this, all of those things have to happen for me to support the current, or for me to support a delegate system, because I do not support the current delegate system.
So do we want to vote on the motion?
Yeah, so just to be clear, what we're voting on, Stacie, Brendan, hold me accountable on this. So what we're right now going to vote on, so we got to close the discussion, and then we're going to vote on Stacie's recommendation that we keep the opportunity for unaffiliated regional delegates, but to meet specific requirements.
Well, actually, I thought her motion was the generic phrase, keep the delegate system fixing the problem areas, and then we would go into details after that.
Then I think we need to make sure that what we're voting on has the exact language. And so Stacie, I would say you need to put the exact language of what we're voting on in the chat so that we all know what we're voting for or voting against. If there's no more debate on the issue.
Right.
It's just exactly what's in bold on the document.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Right.
I don't. Yeah. I mean.
All right.
They're
So
right, because some of those fixes may not, right? They might not work. They might not be, if we decided to do, which, you know,
okay.
if we decided to do this, that we could have discussions about how we would recommend that. I'm just giving ideas, throwing things out there of how it could work, how the fixes could work. But yes, in a nutshell, the motion is to keep the delegate system not as is, fixing the problem areas.
Okay, I just dropped it in the chat.
Okay, so Stacie just said, keep the delegate system not as is. So it has to, so the word not as is.
Okay, hold
to be
on.
there.
We can take care of that.
But
The delegate
the problem-
system not as is,
but fixing the problem areas.
but fixing the problem areas. Look good to you?
It's your motion, Stacie?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So is there any more debate on this recommendation? Okay. So Mr. Chair, you want to close the debate?
Yep, let's have a vote. That works. Ashanti, whenever you're ready.
Brendan,
I vote no.
Dan,
No.
Adam,
No.
Stacie,
Yes.
Isaiah,
I vote no.
Daniela,
No.
I also vote no.
I dissent.
You'll certainly have an opportunity to write something in the report that we submit.
I'm not offended.
Cool.
No, I really am not. I can totally be a professional about this.
You're not going to send a troop to do a stop the steal rally or something, right?
Oh, you don't have to worry about that.
All right. So that we can move ahead, do we want to go to Brendan's recommendation number 2 then?
Well, Israel, I know that
Wait.
you had a motion that you were champing at the bit to do, so.
Yeah, so what I will do at the end of this, because that would be my last, right, in the order. So let's keep what the chair had said, which is let's keep an order. And then at the end, if Stacie will be okay with me, I will then honor hers by taking her recommendation, which she said it was all or nothing. I will then include that as my recommendation, and then we can vote on that solo contero.
Okay. So in that case, I move that we recommend providing all SPJ members ample time and opportunity to give feedback and suggestions to the Bylaws Committee and Resolutions Committee regarding proposed bylaws amendments and resolutions prior to the SPJ Board of Directors approving the final language of those proposals and eliminating the opportunity for further changes to proposals at the convention.
I second.
Discussion.
Okay.
Can I
So,
amend?
That, go ahead. Sorry.
It's Brendan's motion, so he should start.
Gotcha.
yeah, I'm happy to have you amend, and I'm going to be quick. The most controversial part of my motion here is eliminating the opportunity for further changes at the convention. The reason I'm proposing this is I believe that the changes at the convention that I saw were being made haphazardly without a lot of review. I don't think we should be making bylaws amendments on the fly. I'm much more comfortable with bylaws amendments being made after the bylaws committee reviewed it and the board of directors reviewed it and everybody got to have their say. And then the board of directors say, here it is, based on your feedback, take it or leave it. If somebody wants to tweak it, then what they should do is they should vote down the bylaws amendment and they should work on tweaking it to be presented the following year. The resolutions, I think, are things like, say we're going to resolve to support the press in Ukraine, right? We get to do that. The resolutions tend not to be controversial. I know sometimes they can be, but I want to follow that same process. My one concern about the timeline is, what if a war breaks out like a week before the convention, but we require, 30 days, 90 days for somebody to submit a resolution and have it approved by the board. I think there are going to be times where we will want the board, perhaps it has to be by unanimous consent, but I think there will be times when we want the board to put forward a resolution on the fly. I'm just opposed to bylaws amendments and amendments to bylaws amendments happening on the fly.
Dan, do you mind if I just quickly say something? Okay, so I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong, because there are people who are much more experienced with this, but I don't think the board or the organization currently issues resolutions outside of the convention. So if a war were to break out at Christmas time, it's not gonna be a resolution, it's gonna be a statement.
Right.
So the organization would still be free to
Well,
issue statements
yeah.
on the fly. So I don't think my personal opinion is we don't necessarily have to be worried about the board not being free to issue resolutions, because they don't really anyways. The organization doesn't anyways outside of the convention.
Well, I understand the statements would not be restrained, but I do think there's value in having the convention adopt such resolutions.
Sure. Yeah, sure. And they still would under this current system. I mean, we're not cheap. We're just opening it up to the whole membership is what we would do. Anyways, Dan.
Yeah, the whole idea of no changes at a convention, that's not unusual. So it's really not that controversial. The Foreign Correspondents Club in Hong Kong, well, it is not a delegate-based thing, but at our general membership meeting, you either, when bylaws changes came in, they were voted up or down. If they were voted down, you would hear all the debate on why it was a bad bylaws change, work on it over the next year and take it up again at the next general meeting. So I have no problem at all with not, it's either up or down votes, period. On the resolutions, I think there's marginal strength in having a statement of a resolution, because it brings the message to all SPJ members in one big fell swoop, instead of the statements that come out and if people even bother to take a look to see what the president or the board has to say. I do agree, though, that we need to be able to have some flexibility with resolutions at convention time. But I'm not sure how that would work, because we're not going to do a business section if we do one person, one vote and do it online.
Yeah, I think my suggestion would be, we only issue resolutions once a year. I think that, I mean, there's no stating on when the board has to, I don't think, when the board, because the board moves everything to the right now, the delegates, but in this case, it would be the voters, but there's no like statement on when they have to do it, right? I mean, maybe there is 30 days, they have to provide it.
You have to have the resolution submitted 30 days prior, yeah.
Well, so we already have to, right? So if you already have to.
Yeah, but
do
that's
that,
with a delegate meeting,
Right, no, I understand that, but what I'm saying is like, if you have to provide it to the delegation, or in this case, the membership 30 days prior, if a war breaks out at the convention or 15 days beforehand, it's already too late to move something in front of them anyways. See what I'm saying? So as long as that deadline remains the same, it doesn't really change anything, I don't think. Correct me if I'm wrong on that.
I know we've done resolutions in the past for events that have come up right at the beginning of the convention. And I can't remember what the procedure was. There is a procedure to do that.
Okay, so the Bob Becker says that there's no deadline for resolutions. The resolutions committee sets a schedule. So maybe what we want to do is we want to just take resolutions out of the proposal and just make it, because are there bylaws, amendments to resolutions right now at the convention? Maybe there are. I don't know.
So the two kinds of things we vote on the convention are bylaws amendments, and we vote on resolutions, if I'm correct, right?
Yes, but what I'm not disputing that. What I'm saying is at the convention right now, can you say, I propose an amendment to this resolution?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what we want to do is we want to make it so people can't make amendments to anything at the convention, but we want to make resolutions, there be flexibilities to when they can be issued.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, why don't in the language, why don't we just eliminate the ability to make amendments? I mean, currently it sounds like there's no deadline for resolutions to be proposed outside of the resolutions committee makes that. So maybe we want to just keep that the way it is.
I think that the question, based on Ashanti's comments in the document, was, when I say ample time, do I mean 60 days or 90 days or 30, and that we should make a recommendation that's fair? Right. My only concern is those extenuating circumstances that I mentioned. Mm-hmm. Other than that, I would think, like, Ashanti, if you have an idea to propose an amendment, and my only concern would be extenuating circumstances, but I'm happy with whatever amendment you want to propose.
Here's my thought. Why don't you just put that 60-day window in for just bylaws, right? Like,
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying? And just leave resolutions out of it, because it seems like the resolutions committee has their own timetable and their own system. And that seems to be, nobody's brought that up during this system, the flaws in the resolution system. So maybe we just make that window just for bylaws and leave resolutions out, and just make it so that nobody can make amendments to anything at the convention.
yeah, I
Does
feel
that
like
make-
that would make sense for kind of the spirit by which I suggested the 60-day ample time is really about the bylaw amendments and not so much resolutions.
So how are we changing the proposed language so we can?
So I could put it into the chat. I guess, like, if we're able to leave resolutions out of the language, because we're not concerned about ample time for resolutions feedback. So I'll cross out N resolutions committee, I'll cross out N resolutions. And then providing ample time, if we change, providing SPJ members no fewer. So I'm going to cross out ample time and opportunity, say providing all SPJ members no fewer than 60 days to give feedback and suggestions to the bylaws committee regarding proposed bylaws amendments prior to final approval.
By the board.
Do we need 2 periods for feedback, or just one for the bylaws committee, and we don't need a second one before the board votes?
No, we don't need a second one for the board votes, I don't think.
Okay, so
Well, I would think you would want the proposals, if they're made public before you want to talk to your board members about the bylaws before they vote on it and send it to the convention. That's where people are going to put their weight in.
So that's in place, if I'm understanding this correctly. So basically, the bylaws committee would form the language for bylaws proposals the same as they do now, but it would provide a mechanism for feedback.
Okay,
Right? And then it would go to the board, and the board would discuss and vote whether to move it to the members, just like they do already.
right, okay, yeah.
But in the board, I believe, and Israel, you were part of this process last year, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that the board, and I think Daniela was too, the board already provides an opportunity for feedback from members at that meeting. Is that correct? Okay, so basically, what we're doing is we're making sure that the bylaws committee gives an opportunity for feedback before it goes to the board.
Okay.
Does that make sense to everyone? Are we ready for a vote? Okay.
yeah,
So just to be clear, we are voting on that recommendation that Brendan just.
Put in the chat.
So, yeah, I guess, I don't know what the friendly amendment rules are, but, this is my amended and/or substitute motion.
And
I say we have-
I seconded
Okay.
before, so then I second his amendment to his original.
So
recommendation.
yeah, so the maker of the motion changed the wording and the seconder approved it. We can go on.
That's
Okay.
correct.
Shanti, whenever you're ready.
okay.
Should we read out the amended one just to make sure it's on record?
Yeah, Ashanti would be the one as the record
Yeah,
keeper.
I can read it out. Providing all SPJ members no fewer than 60 days to give feedback and suggestions to the bylaws committee regarding proposed bylaws amendments prior to the SPJ Board of Directors approving the final language of those proposals and eliminating the opportunity for further changes to proposals at the convention. Okay, all right. Dan,
Yes.
Adam,
Yes.
Stacie,
Yes.
Brendan,
Yes.
Israel,
I vote yes.
Daniela,
Yes.
and I vote yes, unanimous.
Okay, so our next proposal is also by Brendan, if I'm correct, right?
Yeah, I had 4 in total, so I'll move it quickly. I move that we require, I move that we recommend requiring a 2/3 supermajority vote of the membership to adopt bylaws amendments.
Discussion? Well, Brendan, you go first.
Well, did somebody
I
second?
second.
Seconded.
Oh, sorry.
I think that a simple majority makes it too easy to change the bylaws, and they'll change too frequently and they'll go back and forth, which I think is disruptive. I think more than 2/3 would probably give too much power to the minority. Like if it was 3/4, then you would have 25% of the people saying no, and it seems like too much. It seems like it's going to be too much of a ask to get 75% of people on board or whatever it is. But I think that a 2/3 supermajority is a good balance between a simple majority and anything greater than 2/3.
Dan?
Yeah, I have no problem with the 2/3. It's what 2/3 of what? Because you state membership as opposed to people voting.
Yeah.
And that's you're never
Yeah.
going to get 2/3 of membership.
Sure.
It was supposed to be voters, I believe, in the document.
I guess I was trying to imply by supermajority vote that
So
I
instead of
didn't say a
saying,
supermajority of the membership. I said a supermajority vote of the membership, but we could definitely change
just-
that.
Of those voting
Yeah.
has to be, because if it's vote of the membership is a very clear, distinct.
Yeah, so let's
Statement.
remove that ambiguity. Require a 2/3 supermajority
Of those voting.
of those voting to adopt bylaws amendments. And I don't think we need to, we probably don't need to repeat members or membership, because based on our other recommendations, we definitely mean the members.
Right.
So I would revise my original motion to read as such.
Israel?
Yes, I am going to vote against this recommendation. Again, if our task is to bring more equity into our business, I'm concerned that a supermajority is often used at times, but again, people that might have the intent, or, it just so happens that you can quickly scuttle a good bylaw, but you can quickly sink it, right? I mean, we see that in the Senate. The minority has a majority vote. If we have moved to say one person, one vote, right, and we're trying to make this more democratic, I am not a fan of supermajorities because that gives too much voice to a few. And we've already made it harder, right? So we're making it more equitable by saying one person, one vote. We're already cutting the red tape by saying bylaws committees, they can take the voice of the people, but once they make the recommendation to the board, they are the elected officials, they can make the recommendation and it moves on. So the process that we have done has been, again, more equitable. The power has been diffused. I don't want to add more of that. So I disagree with this recommendation. I think everything else we've done, even simple majority, that works, right? We've eliminated as much as we can the idea that a few have more power. Here, we're just trying to give more people an opportunity. And if a simple majority say yes, then that's the democratic process. So I'm going to vote no on this one.
Dan?
Yeah, I don't know, maybe it's his sexy beard, but I've been on so many different panels and things in the past where we've dealt with 2/3 majorities, but there are many times when I've used that supermajority to kill proposals and to kill events. I'm going to have to go with Israel on this one.
So I'm just going to say,
Israel to you.
Israel.
You're in the international community.
I can
You have to
listen.
say Israel.
I can throw in a hell of a Palestinian accent.
Yes, that would be Israel to you. That would be Israel.
so I just want to say the reason why I'm going to support this is because I think when you're thinking of super majorities in the Senate, you're looking at a set number of people that are going to vote, you know, the number of senators that there are. I think that here we don't know how many people are going to vote for a proposed amendment every single year. I don't think, you know, we have almost 6,000 members. What percentage of those 6,000 members are going to vote? You know, I think it's probably going to be relatively low. I think we had like 700 or 800 voters for elections last year. So the reason why I don't think having just a majority vote would work is because then if you want something to pass, all you got to do is just get a whole bunch of people to vote in favor of it. So I think that would open up a door.
Welcome to democracy. That's the very definition of democracy.
Yeah, but I think what would happen is you would wind up getting a lot of, I mean, that's not the case for changes to the Constitution, right? Like, this is our Constitution, and to amend the Constitution, it's not a majority vote in Congress, you know? And that's why I think that our system should be similar to that. If we're going to change our Constitution, it should be hard, just the same way it is in our democracy to change our Constitution. So that's my thought.
You know, again, thank you, Bob Becker, for following every step of our discussion. But to his point, if you make these changes, you need to set a minimum number of votes cast. This is not an elect either. Otherwise, this is not an election. I think that's what you're meaning. Otherwise, and he's talking about what will be the quorum at the convention. So, you know. Again, to those 2 points, if you have a supermajority, but you don't have enough people showing up, either online, I hope we move, you know, again, that's a discussion. Then what will happen, right? You're you know, again, I've already made my point, so I won't repeat it, but I think we at least need to consider those 2 points.
Well, I think the quorum is, we'd be sending it out to everybody, so everybody's technically present as long as they get the email.
Not
Yeah, I
necessarily.
was just going to say what Adam said. Like, we're not recommending that they open opportunities for bylaws amendments multiple times a year. So the current system in place that bylaws amendments are once a year. They're tied to the convention. The only thing we're changing is now everybody gets to do it. They get to do it remotely. There's not going to be an opportunity where they can call for a bylaws amendment and schedule a vote that nobody knows about, and then like 3 people vote on it. Based on everything that's here, based on our 60-day requirement, and the existing structure of the bylaws that require things to be advertised, I don't fear somewhere that we need a minimum vote. And the minimum vote for quorum, I mean, that could be true whether we have a simple majority vote or a super majority vote. So I don't think that quorum question affects my resolution, because the quorum question is a problem if we have a simple majority.
I also think, I don't know how it would be possible for us to get a quorum, because then you'd need everybody to, you'd need a certain amount of people to cast votes, which is what I think Bob Becker said. So in order for a bylaws amendment to pass, you would need whatever bar we set. I feel like that would be, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to that, but I feel like that would also set a really high bar for bylaws to pass.
Dan, your hand's up. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just called up the DC chapter bylaws. We make amendments with a majority of chapter members voting. And, you know, again, it's just whoever vote, if we have a proposal, whoever votes in our annual election, if that ballot's on there, a majority wins.
Okay. So if my hand's up and that means I have the floor, what I recommend, if somebody wants to set a quorum and says that in order to pass any bylaws amendment, a quorum constitutes, you know, at least 10% of members voting or at least 20% of members voting, I will let somebody else make that recommendation if they want to. What I want to do right now is just call the question on my motion.
Do we have a second? Somebody would have to second it so we can vote.
Second.
Okay, so we ready to vote? So Brendan's calling the question. So Ashanti?
Okay.
Can she read what we're voting on to put it on the record?
Let me go back up. Okay, requiring a 2/3 supermajority vote of, wait, I'm sorry. I don't think did we
Those-
put in the
those voted.
amended version? Hold on here. Okay, here it is.
Yeah.
Requiring a 2/3 supermajority of those voting to adopt bylaws amendments. Okay, okay. Brendan,
Aye.
Dan,
No.
Adam,
Yes.
Stacie,
No,
Israel,
No,
Daniela,
No.
and I vote for. So it's 3-4, oppositions win.
And what is our fourth?
I do have to go. I have to go pick up my kids because it is 5:22. And I'm probably actually gonna be late, so I do need to head out.
do you want to just make your recommendation, or do you think it was dealt with under recommendation 2?
It was dealt with.
Okay.
Yep.
Do you want to leave a proxy vote for one of us, or if it's a tie, we could revisit that? How do you want to handle that?
I leave my proxy vote with Adam.
With who? With me?
Adam.
Okay.
Yep.
No pressure on me.
No pressure. Make good
Cool.
decisions.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, guys.
Ashanti, have a safe drive.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, so does somebody want to just handle recording the vote?
I will.
Okay, that works.
Good, because I was fired as recording secretary for my chapter.
Okay, so we have our fourth recommendation, I believe.
Okay.
Approved by the Bylaws Committee.
So my next motion is I move that we recommend only permitting proposed bylaws amendments that are approved by the Bylaws Committee and a majority of the SPJ Board of Directors to be considered during the convention.
I will second that.
All right, thank you for that. So what I want to say about this is, I hope the language is clear enough. This is my intent. I believe that amendments to our bylaws, as Adam said, they are, that's our constitution. I believe those amendments should be made by the Bylaws Committee. I believe that they should be vetted by and approved by the Board of Directors. I believe this because the Board of Directors is our elected body that we are putting our faith and trust into. And the fact that we have a Bylaws Committee means that we're giving these changes a lot of scrutiny by a lot of people. And also we're requiring 60 days under our previous recommendations. What I don't like is people who are not on the board independently bringing bylaws changes that they have been able to bring through the board, that they've been able to bring to the convention because we apparently have the ability under the bylaws for like chapter leaders to sign on. And if you get enough chapter leaders, you could add a bylaws amendment to the convention. It just seems like we're electing a board of directors only to subvert it. And we're not getting the best proposals because they're not being vetted properly. They could just be written by one person. So that's the intent behind my motion.
So I just want to clarify something. So this proposal would get rid of the system in which 10 chapters can sign on to move a proposed bylaws change to the membership.
In effect, yes. I'm wording it broadly because I don't know any other way that people can bring amendments. And I don't just want them to eliminate that. I would want them to also not replace it with some other system. I just want to get rid of that. I don't want them to say, oh, well, we'll get rid of that, or we'll make it 20, or we'll provide some other way for people to propose amendments. I don't want to provide another way. I think that we have the channels for bylaws amendments to be made. I'd like to use those channels and no other channels.
Dan had his hand up first.
Okay, if we're going to one person, one vote, we're essentially eliminating the business meeting at the convention. So there will be no opportunities to debate the bylaws anyway at the convention. So I'm thinking that, and any votes would then be virtual, and it would be an up or down vote.
So I just want to clarify something. I think the intent of this, if I'm understanding correctly, isn't to be able to offer, isn't for somebody to show up at the convention, because there won't be a convention meeting and offer a vote. What Brendan, I think, is referring to is last year, the proposal to give communities delegate votes. The bylaws committee moved that forward. The board decided not to move it forward. And then before the convention, 10 chapters, I think it was more than that. I think it was like 18 or so. I don't have the exact number.
18.
It was 18, yeah. Signed on to move that, to bypass the board and move that to the convention. So this would eliminate that process.
Okay.
That's would be the intent of that.
That process is the reason for this task force.
Right. Okay.
Part of
Okay.
it.
All right. Yes, I remember all of that. So, okay.
I just want to make sure
You're looking at
understands.
that step between the board and the convention as opposed to at the convention.
Right.
And Dan, I've put Article 14, right? Article 14, Section 1, subsection A is going to get changed a lot based on our recommendations. But I'm pulling out from that article that section that was used by a few when the board voted down the bylaws recommendation made at the time. I believe Bob Becker was the chair of the bylaws. The board voted it down, and then the president at the time, with the help of a non-board member, advocated for this to be implemented, which is that a minimum of 10 chapters and or communities in the manner set forth in Part B hereof. So Brendan, that's what I believe, right? You're targeting.
Yes, and as I mentioned, I have a problem with all manners of subverting the board and the bylaws committee. This happens to be the one that exists. I just don't want there to be any.
That's the one that we know of exists right now. I would just like to say, Israel, you still have your hand up. Do you?
Oh yeah, no, that was it.
Okay.
That was just I wanted to supplement to what Brendan was saying.
Yep. I'd just like to say that last year, from my understanding, that process has only been used twice. It was last year and there was one other time. That's as far as I know. And I don't think many chapter leaders even knew that existed, right? I think most people, unless you're really ingrained in the bylaws, knew that existed. So when I, as a chapter leader, got an email that was being pushed forward, it appeared to me, whether it was the intent or not, I'm not saying it was, but it appeared to me, because I didn't know that process existed, that something sneaky was happening, and it caught me off guard. And I think that may have been the case with other chapter leaders as well. Again, I'm not saying anything nefarious happened. I'm just saying that because I didn't know that system existed, I was like, what is going on? And it's in part because it doesn't get used a lot anyways, which in my opinion is a good thing. So I would definitely be in favor of eliminating this just because it doesn't get used a lot. And I think it caused a lot of confusion and frustration, and maybe made some question the intention of those who were putting it forward. Not saying they were doing anything wrong. I'm just saying that was the perception, I think, and I would like to avoid that in the future. But anyways, Stacie, you had your hand up.
Yeah. So I do not think that there was any ill intent. I'm not in that. I wasn't in that. I'm not behind the scenes. I wasn't back there and in it. But of the people I've talked to since, I just don't think there was ill intent at all. But it isn't that we only got 10, not we, but it isn't that you only got 10 chapters. It has to be proposed by a group of 10 or more, and it was 18 chapters. if that rule wasn't in place, if that law or that wasn't a possibility to happen, that wouldn't have been brought, right? Board was going to shut it down, and that's it. And I think that that led to us with the task force. That did propel this task force to form. If that didn't happen, we wouldn't even be talking about a one member, one vote, right? And maybe that's the roundabout way of us being here is to be able to have that kind of a I don't want to say power, but voice or something. The fact that 18 chapters, 18 voted for that and was able to overturn a board, I think speaks volumes. I continue to believe that the board should not have so much power, and I quite like that. And if we were not talking about communities, I still like this, right? Even if it's not about a community, and also just so we all know, the communities were never. We were quite shocked. I don't know if I can speak. I shouldn't speak for Dan.
I think you guys found out before we did.
We were quite surprised at the, no, we were quite surprised at the conflict with what is the problem? Why would this be a conflict? We don't understand why we're in competition. Why is it thought that we're in competition? Like, we don't care, like, go vote with a chapter. We don't care. But we just want the people who are not with a chapter and very active within our community to be able to vote. That's it. So we were very taken aback. And I think if you're not in the freelance community or Dan's community, you don't really know how we run and what we're about, I guess. Anyway, that's my take on that. I think that was a really an important thing that happened. And I welcome it. I welcome that kind of healthy debate that happened. And I understand what Adam's saying. If you think that it was done behind, in a dirty way or behind a back, I get it. But I just don't think there was ill intent. Certainly not from all of those people, or from, there might maybe one person, but there's ill intent from, you could pick 10 people out and there's one of them's going to have bad motives, right? So let's, I don't know. I just feel like it's not, I guess I'm not that cynical.
Yeah, I'm just talking about the perception of it. I'm not actually
saying. Yeah, no, I understand. And I do understand what you're saying. I understand what you're saying. And Brendan, I think, was the same way. I think he was like, wait, what is happening? It doesn't look good.
Right. Israel?
Yeah, Stacie, I get that it was 18 chapters. Maybe it's the lawyer in me, maybe it's the journalist in me, but I found it very odd that within 48 hours, the board vote was struck down on Saturday. At that time, the president of SPJ sent out an email saying that a board member, that an SPJ member, not a board member, right, was going to collect the votes without any supervision whatsoever. And by the way, I asked the board this. The bylaw says by the majority of the cast to amend the exact wording of the amendment shall have submitted to all members not less than 60 prior and shall have been originated by convention, the board, or the minimum of the 10 chapters. This was not originated by the 10 chapters. This was originated by Matt Hall. He's the one that sent the email. Andy Schatz was the one who was tasked by the president to collect the votes. That was, as I'm reading the bylaws, this was not originated by the chapters. Origination by the chapters would have been, hey, the board voted it down. We chapters are going to originate the bylaws changes. And then if you look at section B, it says the way to do this is it has to be by chapters in good standing, voting upon referendum ballot, provided that more than 50% of the certified vote is cast. I don't know if within those 48 hours, those 18 chapters got together, voted, followed their own bylaws There's no record of whether 50% of the referendum voted. There's no record of whether those chapters were in good standing. We never knew who were those 18 chapters. And then if you look at section C, it says, by the minimum of 10 chapters and or communities by certifying to the executive director of the society that such proposal has been endorsed. When I asked the executive director, can you show me how they were certified? His answer was, he holds the ultimate sway as to how to interpret the language of the bylaws. So that's the problem with how this whole thing happened. It's not that 18 chapters voted at the end, it's that there is no record of whether section B and whether C was followed. None whatsoever.
Brendan has his hands up.
So are you saying that in order for a chapter to approve that, they needed their chapter membership to approve it, not just their chapter board?
But you can look at the language.
Well,
Look at the
so-
language itself. You read this.
Okay. All right. So I didn't even hear that until right now, but it's funny because a lot of these amendments, like I agreed with and they were fine. I just did not like how I was approached and I had no time. So June 26th, we get an email. It wasn't forwarded to me until June 27th. It's a petition drive since the national board didn't let the proposals proceed.
By the way, can you put it on record who sent that email?
Sent by Andy, who I had no
Andy
idea who
who?
that was.
Andy
But
who?
Andy, it was, that's what the email says. In the attachment, it says Andy Schatz
Okay, thank you.
was a former national board member, Region
Okay.
2 director, DC Pro president.
Yeah.
So
But
that was,
I might
that was-
add, sorry, he wasn't a member of a chapter at that point. Just want to put that out there.
So
That's right. Right. By the way, yes, that is correct. Brendan, I don't mean to interrupt. At that point, he had left the DC chapter
Yeah.
in April so that he could become an unaffiliated delegate.
yeah.
So therefore, it didn't originate from the chapters.
So it seems like everything that, even if we did not pass my resolution, what happened last year shouldn't have happened. Setting that aside, I'll tell you why this made me super uncomfortable. So it gets sent at, it was sent at 11:42 at night on a Saturday. That's not when I generally check my email. So Sunday morning, I got the email. And it says it's a series of bylaws changes that are not major, but worthwhile. In the attachment, none of the changes is major. Nowhere in the attachment was the language of the bylaws change. The only amendment that I later discovered was controversial. Said communities which connect members in much the same way chapters do would have additional definitions that match how chapters start, operate, and have representation on SPJ matters. I had no idea how the delegate system worked. And I was being asked to get approval to add this bylaws amendment to the agenda without actually getting to see what the actual bylaws amendment language does or to know what its implications were. Between June 27th and when he needed an answer, I'm trying to see, he needed a letter of support by Wednesday night.
And the reason he needed it by Wednesday night is because by Thursday morning, it was the 60-day clock to make sure that everybody has notice of proposed bylaws to the convention. That's why the 48-hour window.
So I had no board meeting between Sunday and Wednesday. And honestly, I was not comfortable just emailing my board and saying, what do you think, voted up or down via email? Honestly, we do take some votes via email sometimes because we only meet monthly. But I would not do that for something as consequential as a bylaws amendment to the SPJ bylaws that the national board was not in favor of. I did not want the Press Club of Long Island to join in an effort where we were subverting the board. I thought that would be a bad look for us. The Press Club of Long Island, right now we have over 80 members. If everybody was counted like they should be, I believe it should be over 100. They say 10 pro or student chapters. We were asked if the Hofstra chapter would join. I believe the Hofstra chapter is somewhere between 5 and 10 members. So you could get 10 pro chapters or slash student chapters, and each chapter could have 5 or 10 members. So you could subvert the national board with like 50 or 100 members of SPJ represented. You could just subvert the national board that were elected by hundreds of people. And I mentioned at the last meeting, I felt taken advantage of, that somebody sent an email to me as a president and a delegate saying, oh, nothing's major. And then I get to the convention and find out that everything was major. Like, I'm so glad I didn't just willy-nilly send a letter of support to something that I did not have time to review, my board did not have time to review, and I didn't understand. This is why I think we have a bylaws committee and why we have a national board. And that's why I recommended we have 60 days for the members to give their feedback.
And again, to Bob Ecker's point, he says each chapter communicated with the executive director. The amendments were drafted by the bylaws. All of the letters were published online. All true. However, let me ask this. According to the bylaws, did this happen by a majority vote of all chapters in good standing? Look at the exact language of the bylaws. Was this voted upon by a referendum ballot? Was this 50% of the certified vote is cast? And finally, did the board of directors specify the limits during which those ballots may be cast and counted? Because if the answer is no, this was done in violation of the bylaws as I read it. And if you look at section C, it says, by a minimum of 10 chapters, by certifying to the executive director of the society that such proposal has been endorsed by a majority vote of the board of each chapter or community. We don't know if all board members did that because there is no record. I want to see the record of the vote. I want to know which person voted for and against. I want to be able to say, Bob, Lily, and Tom voted for it. I didn't want just someone from a chapter to say, oh yeah, we voted for it. Again, I don't think there's any nefarious, but as a journalist, verify, verify, verify. So Bob, I disagree with you that the letter of the language, that the intent in both the letter of the law was not followed. I respectfully disagree with you.
Stacie, you have your hand up.
Can you tell me who sent what was the email that you received, Brendan? Who sent the email? Who did it come from in like your inbox?
The email came from Andy Schatz to the Region 1 coordinator, who was the previous PCLI president. So he got it first, and then it went to me, and it went to the immediate past president and our longest serving board member.
So
was it sent out to all chapter presidents or a select number of them?
I can't speak to who it was sent to because this email was just addressed to one person. It wasn't a group email, so I don't know who else he sent it to individually.
So can I jump in? I got that same email because what happened was Andy sent it to the Region 1 coordinator, Chris Vaccaro forwarded it to all the chapter presidents in Region 1. Because Brendan and I got the same email. I believe Colin DeVries at the Deadline Club did too. And there was a conversation there. But Chris Vaccaro is, so this didn't originate from the chapters is the point, because it couldn't have. Andy Schatz wasn't a member of a chapter. He didn't send it out in a group email to everyone. He sent it out to the regional coordinators. And I believe, I don't think I'm wrong on this, but I believe that he asked the regional coordinators to send it out to the chapters, which is what Chris did. And that's why we all got it in ours.
Okay, and I'm just, I continue to get emails. They have not taken me off as the chapter president for Houston. I have no record of this at all. I just want that to be on the record, that I have no record of receiving an email. I just looked up Catherine Jones. I just did a search in her email, in my email with, she's the Region 8 coordinator for Oklahoma and Texas. And I don't see anything from her either. That's why I was asking who it came from. But if the region coordinators were asked to send it out, how many did? Who did? Why did they not send it out? Did they see, oh, this is not that important, and not send it out? There's nothing major here. Okay, what's the big deal? I don't need to send this out. I just wondered what the, as long as we're talking about it, it'd be nice to know, why didn't some people send it to their chapter presidents? I should have gotten the email. I mean, I continue to get them from national headquarters about, I just forward them on to my former board members in Houston, but I still get those. So there's no reason I shouldn't have, if it was indeed meant to go to every chapter president.
I mean, it's possible that the regional coordinator did not send it out.
Right, right.
Which-
And then you can go down that hole, or that rabbit hole of, why didn't some send it out? Why was there not enough time? Was it just, did they see it 3 days later and, oh yeah, I can't do this now, it's too late,
So
I'm on your side with this,
Right.
with that part of it.
I don't mean to interrupt. Daniela has to leave as well,
Oh,
and she wants to know how to give her proxy vote to someone. Daniela, if you're still there, you could do that, or you could, tell us how you want to vote. I don't know if everyone would feel comfortable with that. If you do want to give it to a proxy vote, you could pick somebody. Please don't pick me. I've already got to.
All right.
ready to go.
Well,
I was going
are we
to pick
ready?
Israel. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Should we call the roll on this one?
Does somebody want to call it?
Yeah, I think we should call the question.
Okay. So call the question.
The question before the task force is Brenda's recommendation that only permitting proposed bylaw amendments that are approved by the bylaws committee and a majority of the SPJ board of directors to be considered during the convention. I don't think we need to specify that means that a whole lot of Article 14 is going to have to be changed. But certainly, Mr. Chair, you'll at some point you'll have to put a whereas. So that's the call of the question. That's what we're voting on. Only permitting proposed bylaw amendments that are approved by the bylaws committee and a majority of the SPJ board of directors to be considered during the
Do
convention.
you want to run the roll call?
I will run the roll call. I'm pulling up a piece of paper here. Or you know what? I'm just gonna. I'm not gonna write it. I'm gonna type it. Okay. I'm gonna do this official, and then I'll send you this document, Mr. Chair. Question. All right. Roll call. Stacie.
Just for the record, I agree with what Israel has said about, we need to be enforcing that chapters are abiding by their bylaws, and not just, oh, chapters are bringing it, and saying that they're voting and they didn't. So I'm saying no to this,
Yeah.
but not yes to the way it was done this
All right.
past June.
Stacie is a no. Dan.
Yes.
Brendan.
Yes.
Adam.
Yes.
And you are voting yes twice. Is that correct?
Yep, for Ashanti.
Proxy for Ashanti. And then I'm not missing anybody. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then myself, I am voting yes, as well as proxy for Daniela. So the call of the question passes.
And pass 6-1.
It passed 6-1.
And this again will do away with the current system that is in that right now, that we have now, about having 10 chapters Right,
Yes.
this does away with that entire system, just to be
Yeah.
clear, okay?
That will be, the bylaws committee will be the one that will have to deal with the language based on our recommendations, but certainly at least we are now putting on the record that there's a lot of things that have to change under Article 14.
So I believe that's all of the proposed recommendations. Is that?
No, I
No?
have,
Okay.
I have two.
Okay,
So I'm going to honor the work of my colleague, Stacie. But let me, because I have two recommendations. So let me first, all the way to the bottom. Let me make both recommendations so separate. For my recommendation is that the interpretation of bylaw language should be discussed, debated, and voted on by a majority of the board members.
What it just,
I-
I'll second that just for purpose of discussion.
discussion. I want to mind if I just ask, isn't that how the process already?
Yeah, that's
Not-
what I was gonna ask too.
Not necessarily. So that's the call of the question, or that's my move that I recommend that. So somebody's got to.
I
second it.
seconded it for purposes of discussion, because I don't know what you're getting at.
Sure, absolutely.
I'm confused too.
So what I am getting at is exactly what happened last year, again, under Article 14, which was when it said that, where's the origination language? I just want to make sure on the record, where is the origination language under Article 14? Section A, the 60 days prior to the opening of the convention, provided that the proposal shall have been originated by convention. In my mind, that is very clear that this needed to be originated at the chapter, or it need to be originated at the convention. When issues were raised to the executive director as to how can you square what's happening over the last 48 hours with the language of the bylaws that says it has to originate with the chapters. I heard it through the grapevine that the executive director said, I have ultimate say into the interpretation of the language of the bylaws. Now, I don't know that for a fact. I heard that, so let's just right now call it hearsay. But when I did hear that the executive director either directly or indirectly insinuated that if there was ever a question of the interpretation, so in other words, it would be the statutory interpretation of the bylaws, that somehow the executive director believes he is the final judge in this, that concerned me greatly, because one person should not have the power to decide what a word in the bylaw means or doesn't mean. So I am proposing my recommendation because if we want more equity, the board members have been voted on by the membership to make broad decisions. And in my opinion, statutory interpretation of the bylaws should fall to the board by a simple majority and not to the executive director. And we need to put that in the bylaws. That's why I'm making that recommendation.
I have very well stated. I have no opposition to that, Israel. I think that's great. I see the need for it. If that, and like you said, we don't know for sure if it happened, but it will prevent it from happening. If it didn't, it will prevent it. And if it did, it will correct it.
Brendan, you have your hand up.
Yeah, so I guess my only concern is, could this backfire that the board can then say that the bylaws say whatever they want the bylaws to say to fit their needs?
That certainly can be an issue, right? I mean, listen, political accountability is not just for the people who are elected, but those that do the electing. And in my opinion, right, the membership will get the board that they voted on. You know, there was an email sent in this prior election. It's very public, so therefore we're not revealing anything, but a former president sent an email to a lot of people insinuating that if you boarded for a certain, list of board members, that, X would happen versus if you boarded for other people, right? Certainly some people can take that approach, right? That if you board for these board members, it's going to be, Armageddon, versus if you board for this slate, then it's a good thing. That wasn't my approach. People can see on the record that when I made, as a non-board member, I support X, it was all about being positive. So Brendan, to your point, could a 5-4 board, could they vote to interpret bylaws as they see fit? I would say this. I would say it will be debated. It will be discussed. It will be in the public. The public will have a chance, right, to hold them accountable through public hearing. That board will be, that vote will be public. People can abuse the system, but I hope to believe that the people who decide to run for the board, they're doing it because they care for the organization. And in my opinion, if I care about the organization, I'm going to interpret the language to suit, right, the organization, because as a board member, right, I have a duty of care. I have a duty of loyalty that under corporate law, if I do not adhere to that duty of loyalty and care, then I'm in violation of corporate law as a board member. That's one. But number two, that the organization exists for the benefit of the membership. Maybe I'm just, thinking the best of my fellow man.
So, sorry, do we have the benefit of corporate law at SPJ?
Absolutely, 100%. We as board members, we are told at the very beginning by the executive director and by the general counsel, our outside counsel, Mark Balin, we are given training at the very beginning when we swear to uphold the bylaws of the organization. We are told that the organization is structured under Illinois law, and that under Illinois law, we have a duty of care and under a duty of loyalty. And the bylaws make clear that if either a regional director or a board member is not adhering to either the bylaws or in the best interest of the organization, which under case law, right, the best interest is under corporate law, there is a way to remove both a board member and a regional coordinator. And that is all laid out in both case law and in the bylaws. And I'll just tell you this, I take the duty of loyalty and care very seriously. I can't speak for other board members, but I am on the record, both at public meetings and any email that any member wants to request that is part of board business. I have made it clear that you must adhere to the duty of loyalty or care, or otherwise you shouldn't be a board director or you shouldn't be a regional director, because a regional director is an officer of the corporation.
If there's no other discussion, does somebody want to call the?
I'll call the question.
Okay.
Let me put it, recommendation. Let me put it here. All right. So the recommendation is as follows. Interpretation of bylaws, and it should say bylaws. I apologize for that because it's not a bylaw, it's bylaws. I want to make sure. My recommendation is that the interpretation of bylaws language will be discussed, debated, and voted on by a majority of the board members. And you know what? Now that I'm thinking about it, shoot, that's too much wiggle room for interpretation. Board, if you, let me pull back my recommendation because I think it needs to have clear language. Interpretation. language.
Do you want while you're fixing?
Yeah,
While
yeah,
you're crafting that, do we want to move to the next recommendation? Because I
Yeah,
think that
yeah.
was more
Let
of
me
a-
do that. All right, thank you very much. Let me pull my recommendation off the floor. I want to propose what Stacie proposed earlier, and that is I move that we propose that SPJ immediately resolves the issue of lost members. It is necessary to create a system that will accurately count and maintain each chapter and community's member database so that chapters and communities never have to wonder how many members they have.
I'll second that.
Up for debate.
I just want to say that I think this is a great, great recommendation. I 100% support it. Certainly ties into delegate counts this year, but it's important regardless of whether there's a delegate system or not. So, and it's vital to the survival of the organization. So I will 100% support this. Brendan?
I do think that abolishing the delegate system, it actually makes this less important on that front, because now we're not worried about delegate apportionment. On the other hand, you know, as much as I want my chapter members, I don't want to have to be burdened with also asking my chapter members to choose my chapter as their primary instead of choosing some other chapter as their primary or some other community as their primary. I don't want to be in conflict with the other chapters and communities to get my delegates. It would just make my life a lot easier if I did not have delegates. However, when we don't know who our members are, we can't include them on our communications, for our awards, for when we have our board elections that need to be voted on by our members via email. We can't do that when we don't know who our members are. Certain chapters are going to require a quorum to do their bylaws amendments. How do they know if they have a quorum if they don't know how many members they have? We just need better accounting, and we shouldn't have to ask for it, but let's ask for it.
Dan?
Yeah, I'm doing a lot of bold facing, underscoring, large typeset in support of something. If we do go to the one person, one vote, Brendan's absolutely right. We don't have to deal with this delegate count issue, but we do need to know who our members are. And there are chapters like ours that charge dues as well. So that's real money to us in order to run our awards dinners and other programs where we have to shell out money to secure a space. So we really need to know who our people are.
I would also like to add that while if one person, one vote were to pass, this wouldn't affect delegate votes in the future, but this does not, I don't think, require a bylaws change. The board can vote on this specifically, so it can impact this year's convention where bylaws membership counts for delegate votes matter. So this would certainly be something that would help us, hopefully, leading to this year's convention and make sure the membership counts are accurate.
I just want to add one other thing. I mean, all of us running the chapters are volunteers. We don't have the time to keep chasing after members that we think we should have or that we knew we once had, and to maintain the database. I mean, that's what a professional staff at the national office is supposed to be for.
And the members are paying $75 for professional membership. And we're bringing them in for that. So anyways, that's sort of my thought.
You know, I'm going to add one thing, and it's in an email that I received from a member. I reached out to 21 people who were on my rolls last year and were not on my rolls this year. And a lot of them said, well, I did renew, and I renew my chapter membership. I don't know why I'm not counted in the chapter, which was disappointing to hear that they said they had gone through the process of doing both. I know that there was like a period where we got an email from National, and pretty quickly people were added back. And I'm like, oh, look, all these people got added back. They must have added all those people that elected to join our chapter, but for some reason we're not, didn't get counted. But then I just started hearing from other people. One person messaged me on Facebook last week. I can't join the chapter. I can't join the chapter. She emailed National and they added her. So that was good. But when I started to reach out to people personally, one of the most disconcerting responses I got was, thanks very much for the reminder, and I renewed my membership, but in case you don't know, I didn't get a reminder from SPJ about membership lapsing, and their website is not user-friendly. I'm a member of other professional groups, and it shouldn't be that hard to renew membership, and the chapters shouldn't have to get involved. The amount of work that I put in this weekend to get people to renew their national membership, it was kind of absurd. My wife is like, why are you doing this? There's other ways I could be spending my time than this kind of frustration. And our chapter doesn't have dues. So if I get those 21 people signed up, that's, $1,500 and change the national gets, that my chapter gets nothing. We could just as easily stop reminding people to renew their SPJ memberships, and people could come to our events or not, and people could enter our awards or not, and we don't have to be concerned whether they're members of SPJ National or not. We could just be a club unto ourselves, which is what we were before our club joined SPJ, when we were just an independent club. So if National isn't keeping up with our membership databases for us, I'm not going to be concerned about keeping up my local chapter's national memberships anymore.
Yeah, and that's a problem, right? That's a major problem.
Yep.
And
Any other discussion?
Are we going to keep that language the way it is? I like Stacie's word of lost members. It's powerful wording, but I know, Dan, you had a change. Do you want to change my recommendation or take it as is?
I don't remember what I thought was the change.
You were using very professional language, Dan, like databases and maintenance, Stacie gets right to it.
If I was listening to Brendan, I would make it even more, I don't know, stronger. Brendan, just to add on, I know that happened with Cincinnati members. I know the president of the Cincinnati board, and she said too that she had members that could not figure out how to sign up for the Cincinnati chapter. They renewed their membership and could not sign up for. And we also in Houston, we're a very small chapter in a very big city down there. No longer in that group, but we did exactly what you did, Brendan. We called all of our past members to see, are you active? Are you met? Some of them had dropped out years ago and were still there. Some of them were not. We had to try to kind of track down those missing people. So it isn't just one computer glitch with the Press Club of Long Island. I know that it's happened in Houston. I know that it's happened in Cincinnati. I know that it's happened to Ashanti in LA. And those are just people we've actually spoken to face to face. So
I think my point was just, it's not even just lost members. It's people who don't understand or who can't figure out how to join a chapter. I mean, maybe it's lost to the chapter, but these are not, we're also losing national SPJ members. I just realized my membership expired a couple of days ago.
Oh, okay. All of his votes are rescinded.
Not one reminder.
Yeah.
Not
Well,
one
so
reminder after
I
35 years with the organization.
Yeah, there was an email from National where it did say that they weren't going to start sending, they could not start sending the reminders yet until they fixed a couple things that they were fixing. So my understanding is they are working on it and they do intend on sending those reminders. So they have acknowledged it already. So it's not going to come as a surprise to them.
Okay. Well, and then the other thing is they sign up for 3 years. They took off one. you do it for our chapter. Our chapter dues are $25 a year. You look at their form for 3 years at $25 a year, it's $50. Now, I know journalists are bad at math, but even I know.
Let me just
So anyway, my issue was not so much with the word, it was more with the word lost and just the inability to properly register and track members.
and let me put that down. And the inability to track and you just said it.
Yeah, I know.
And manage.
And manage is good.
Membership. Okay. And let me just say this, as a board member, and again, we have to hold, you have to hold me accountable. You have to hold the members accountable. You certainly have to hold the executive director accountable. You need to show up to the public comment period of SPJ on Saturdays. I encourage every single person to come and say, this shouldn't happen to us. And if it keeps happening to us, we're not going to join. We're going to leave. That has to get on the record so that way it's not the board members who are saying every day, John, what are you doing? John, are you keeping track of our finances as we hit, a period of financial uncertainty? I mean, I would highly encourage members, please, at the very least, show up to our meetings and talk and voice your opinion. And if you want to complain about me, please do. I'd love to hear it. Anyway, that's not for task force members. All right. So let me put the call to the question. And then
Call the question.
yeah, that's right. Sorry, Mr. Chairman. That's your vote. That's your voice.
Call the question.
All right, I'm putting it. Here's the call, the question. I propose that SPJ immediately resolves the issue of lost members and the inability to track and manage membership. It is necessary for the executive director of SPJ to create an up-to-date data membership system that will accurately count and maintain each chapter and community's member database so that chapters and communities never have to wonder how many members they have. Let me write this down.
Does it need to have the name of the person who recommended it? Does that matter at all? No, I'm serious.
No, I know. You're right.
What'd you say?
I know you're right.
It starts out with I propose.
It should be just the executive director. So I should just put, it needs to be the executive director. I do believe that it should be the executive. I think the executive director.
No, I think she's talking about the
proposal.
proposal just came up because it starts, I propose.
Oh,
Who's I?
Right,
oh,
that's what I mean.
Sorry. Thank you.
And the same for you for the one before it.
Yeah. So
Just
So it could
for
just be
headquarters to know, for the
proposed.
board to know.
Just
Yeah.
start with proposed. SPJ immediately resolves, blah, blah, blah.
propose that. Got it. All right, let me put that here. I know for some people they might want record. How's that? Is that better, Stacie?
Yep.
Okay. Let me write this down. All right. I'm going to call the roll. Stacie.
Yes.
Dan.
Yes.
Brandon.
Yes.
Adam with proxy for Ashanti.
Yes and yes.
Israel, yes, and proxy for Daniela, yes. Okay, we're almost done. One more. Let's get this out of the way. We've already discussed. I move that we vote on the following recommendation. I'm putting it there for everyone to see. I move that we vote on the recommendation that, oh my goodness, it's probably nap time. Oh. All right, any interpretation of the bylaws language under SPJ bylaws shall not be interpreted by any one person, but should only be left up to the board of directors who must discuss the bylaws language and any vagueness that arises in a public forum followed by debate at a board meeting, and then taking a final simple majority vote by board members in order to pass such interpretation.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion?
Yeah, I think that doesn't leave room for the abuse that I was concerned about earlier. I think it's a much better formulated recommendation.
And it leaves the option available if you want to call on, a parliamentarian expert to do an interpretation. The board still has to vote on that and discuss that interpretation. So you're not leaving it to one person.
Which happens at the convention. That's how the convention is done.
Right.
And it happened several times at this last meeting. The parliamentarian had to, the parliamentarian left it up to the person who was in charge of the meeting, which was Matt Hall. And again, that's too much power for one person.
I'm sorry, I've served as parliamentarian. You never give up that power.
I know.
So we want to have a vote?
Call the
Okay.
question.
All right, calling the question. The board recommends any interpretation of the bylaws language under SPJ bylaws shall now be interpreted by any one person, but should only be left up to the board of directors, who must discuss the bylaws language and any vagueness that arises in a public forum, followed by debate at the board meeting, and then taking a final simple majority vote by board members in order to pass such interpretation. Let me write this down, and I'm going to take roll. Stacie,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Brendan,
Yes.
Adam,
Yes.
proxy for Ashanti,
Yes.
and Israel, yes. Proxy for Daniela, yes.
So we made it through our recommendations.
I have 6 more.
So I'm ecstatic. We've made it to the end. This is great. Just a couple of other things that we might have to think about. So I believe that the board is going to take up these recommendations at their April 23rd board meeting.
Did you already tell the executive director to put it on the agenda?
I told Rebecca that we were voting tonight and that it was possible that we could get through them all, then that we may have to have another meeting. But the plan was that if we did get through them all, that they would get taken up at the April 23rd board meeting. That's out of my hands. That's up to the board, Rebecca, the executive director.
But you have to make the presentation.
Yes, exactly. But again, it's up to them whether it actually gets put on the agenda or not, and then I have to make that presentation. I'm just saying that's what my understanding of the plan is right now.
Can I make a recommendation that when you send an email to Rebecca, to Claire, because she's the president-elect, and to the executive director, you need to state the language of what was from the convention of the 120 days. So in order for us to meet the deadlines that's going to be required of both the board, public comment period, and the bylaws language, this thing has to be taken up on this day. You have to insist. That way it's on them.
Right.
That if we made the deadline. If they don't take it up this Saturday, it's on them for not taking it up. But I think in that language, you need to be clear using the language that we have followed the language from the conference.
Stacie?
I just want to clarify what exactly is going. Is it a document? Are you sending this Google document? Are you sending all, whether they got voted up or down, or how is it to be handled?
That's a good question. I'm going to start putting together a report basically summarizing what we've done. I know that I'm going to put together a report summarizing what we've done, briefly what our meetings were, and then we're going to put the things that we voted on. If anybody would like to add a dissenting opinion in there, they can certainly do that. I would ask.
Can you say that again? I just saw that the recommendation that I had were keep the delegate system, fixing the problem areas, and I know that got voted down.
Yes.
I would like my proposal for SPJ to immediately resolve the issue of lost members to not be omitted from that. And I see that it has been. I would like that in.
I took that language. So I took
Yes,
that
yeah.
and then we voted on that.
I just want it back. I would like that to be in mine as well. I'd like that to be, that there shouldn't be a problem with that,
We're
right?
not sending yours to the
Okay,
board.
that's what I'm asking. Are we not sending everything that was discussed? We're not sending a report?
We're sending a report, but we could send in, I was thinking we would just send the recommendations that we made, if that makes sense.
Can Stacie have a chance to also send
Well,
her dissent vote and the recommendations that
Yeah.
she made?
I'd be okay with that.
To be honest, what I would recommend is that you go through each of the proposals that we voted on with the vote.
Sure.
Okay, and then, but this is on your point, Stacie. If the vote we only had on yours was just the one line, keep the system, but fix it.
Mhm.
That's where you would add your minority report, on the vote that that was suggested but voted down. This was the thinking on it. Okay, so in the official report, it's each of the proposals and the vote yay or nay. And then there would be additional reports to flesh out each of those if necessary. And you would want to put all your points back into
Yeah,
that.
I don't want my dissenting voice to be without that resolution of lost members, because I do not support it without the resolution.
Right.
So if they're
So-
reading that as a
Yeah,
package,
but this will be great because they'll see that it passed, but they'll also see that it was part of your
Yeah,
initial
but-
resolution.
What I think Stacie is saying is that the language has been removed in the Google Doc.
I don't think so.
I don't
The
think
Google
so.
Doc is-
Israel's just moved it down and says Balderas recommendation, and it's moved it down to a separate part that got voted on, and it's not in where I say keep the delegate system, fixing the problem areas, and then I go into my.
Oh, yeah, I see what your
It's
your
not
problem
there.
there is, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
so
and
just,
I think he just copied it and pasted it down below, but
yeah, did you write the original into this or did you copy it from somewhere else?
did I write the original what?
Yeah, so in other words, when you wrote your recommendation, did you write straight to this document?
Oh, I wrote it in a Word document. Is that what you're asking? I created a Word document, wrote it,
So
copied
you've
it.
got the original wording still.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes,
So just, why don't you put the original wording,
let me
back.
find it and make sure
And-
that I still have it.
because
So-
your dissenting vote and voice should say all these are linked together.
So
Yes, exactly. I am, if you guys are, I guess, I don't know if I need to make a motion for this, but I had left out the community members and I would like to include communities in there. And remember, I remember I did add it and then you took it, Israel, from there. But I'm going to put my original wording in there now. Did I just copy that?
I think if you have your original wording in there.
I just want to add communities to the original wording, which I did add.
Which is not a problem because we never voted on that.
Okay.
Okay, all we voted on was that boldface header.
Okay, so it's back in there as necessary to criticism.
Okay. So what that,
But you
I mean,
guys
this
can
will
just-
show then is that when you submit your dissenting report, minority report, Adam's got the full report. Here's all the things we voted on, yay, nay, and then you add on this point of the delegates, keep this delegate system, but fix it. Here's my thinking.
Sure.
And then people
okay.
will see, oh, look at that. They took her idea and already.
Yeah,
passed
and I
something.
just want to make sure that my full point, my full dissent is heard, but also if there are people who they might take bits and pieces of everything, right? And I just want to make sure that this is a package deal. This is not, one cannot, in my vote, one of those things, they all have to happen.
Israel knows one of the best things to read in Supreme Court decisions are the dissents.
Yeah, and here's what I would say, Stacie. I mean, obviously, you were saying this is an all or nothing package, and certainly, I think when we voted, we were voting with the understanding that to keep the delegate system and fixing the problem areas, it was a full package, right? And so I think we discussed that when the issue came up to the floor vote. I think, again, I disagreed with the full package. I think that's an important issue because that goes to the issue of equity in the business that we do. And you know, if the issue is full disclosure, I can certainly, as a board member who voted on this, say, by the way, you know, this was what the way it happened. You know, Adam is going to make a presentation with the full package that will contain the whereas, right? Because we have to include the evidence that we gathered in the process to support what we have made as a recommendation. But I think for full disclosure, I think since this is going to be sent out to the public for feedback, I think the public should at least know, by the way, this was an issue that was voted on. It did not pass, but certainly members can say, but we like Stacie's ideas, right? We think that it should be that way. And then that's going to be the language that will be taken upon by the bylaws.
In these recommendations, in Brendan's 4 recommendations, and in my recommendation, which I guess could be 3 or 4 different ones, but again, it's a package to me, so it's one recommendation. Those I believe should be sent out to the public verbatim, right? We're not going to summarize Brendan's or my thoughts.
What we voted on.
Everything that's in this Google Doc, basically word for word, will be sent out.
Yeah,
or be able to be viewed. Is that right?
Well, I think what the public needs to know is what was voted on by the majority and what was voted down by the majority.
Exactly.
Right?
So we could even put the votes next to each of the recommendations, 6-1, 5-2, whatever it was.
Yeah, right. That's and it can just be in the same order we did it. It doesn't have to be these were voted up, these were voted down. It can just be in the same order we did it, for that matter.
Okay, and you will keep in my opposition to the 1 person, 1 vote. That was just a comment, but it's like that wasn't voted on because it was just my opinion. But
Right. So there'll be an area where you can write like dissenting paragraph or something. I just asked.
should I wear my collar?
I think so. We'll take a picture and we'll put it in the. No, my thought is there'll be space for anybody to dissent on any of the votes that want to. I just ask that you keep in mind how long you're writing. Please don't hand in 4 pages of dissent. Just try to be concise. I want you to have your thoughts clearly communicated to everybody. I just like.
No, I mean, it's not. I don't have much more to say than what I wrote. You know.
Perfect.
Do you? When are you? What is the timeline for this?
So here's my plan. Here's what I'm thinking right now. I'm gonna write sort of the summary of how the task force got started and sort of what we did. You know, what our meetings were. Basically, it's not gonna be a very long synopsis of each meeting, but like meeting 1, SPJ Executive Director John Schertzer gave an overview presentation of the delegate system and so on and so forth. So I'm going to write those 2 things, and then I'm hoping, since Israel and Ashanti were the record keepers, right? Maybe the 2 of you could work on putting together the section of what we voted on.
Yeah, I'll send you now what I have.
Well, no, what I want to do is I want to open it up. You 2 would go in there and just work on that section of the report, if that makes sense. Just putting it in there. And then after that's put together, the dissenting thoughts can come in. You know what I'm saying? But what I'm going to do is once I write my section, I'm going to open the document up. I'm just going to invite everybody to it.
So we'll just get an email from you eventually.
Well, what'll happen is probably in a couple of days, you'll get like a Google Doc invite, and it'll show what I have in there. And then Ashanti and Israel can work on the section on, this is what we voted on, this is what the votes were. And then you'd be able to go in and add your dissenting thoughts, if that makes sense. So we'll all see the report well before it gets sent to the board, is my point. And you'll be able to read it. And if you have comments or like, hey, I think we should change this, or this wasn't clear enough, we'll be able to do that, and we can go from there.
And can I, oh, go ahead, Israel.
No, but we cannot add or take away what was not discussed. In other words, we cannot add to the document something that was not discussed.
Exactly what I was gonna say.
Right.
Yeah, I'm gonna be just, it's just gonna be like a summary of like, this is how the task force, my contribution to it is gonna be, this is how the task force started, this is what we did, and then we'll have a section on what we voted on, and people can add in from there. It's
Right,
not
and
being
I
very
think
long.
what Israel, that's exactly what I was gonna say. This Google document
Mhm.
should not, one word should not change from this. There should
Right.
be nothing added, changed, shortened, deleted at all. And I think
Well,
we need to make sure that
well-
Daniela and Ashanti know that.
No, not this Google document. The vote we had, because there's a lot in this document we did not vote on.
I still don't think it should change. I think this should be public record. I
This
think,
was a discussion document, and you can argue either way whether it should be public or not, but it was a committee discussion document. What we voted on is the public document.
I see what you're saying.
Stacie, you could save it as a PDF. And if you save it as a PDF, and then we'll have a local record that hasn't been changed since 9:30 p.m. Eastern time on Monday, April 4th, to prevent any further changes, and we can include that somewhere in our package. But there are things written in there that were then dropped into the chat, revised, dropped into the chat again. So at least, section 1 of our report, in accordance with our task at hand, which was to make recommendations, I would like section 1 of our report to be, we recommend this, 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 or however many it was. I don't want it to be, we recommend this, this failed, we recommend this. Two people like we were tasked to make recommendations. We weren't tasked to make, here's what we don't recommend. And we weren't, it shouldn't become, you have to read, pages of dissent before you hear what recommendation 2 is. We voted, and this is what we're recommending. We shouldn't be further persuading the board with to ask the board to adopt things that we don't recommend. Let's have a section 2.
And adopt things that we don't recommend.
Let's have a section 2 where it says, sure, this was the vote outcome. It's basically just the minutes from this meeting, and the minutes will say 6-1, 3-4, this failed. But the minutes from this meeting are not our recommendations. Our recommendations are what we voted up.
Right, so my thought is we'll have the recommendation, specifically the language of what we voted on. So for example, Stacie, the language that I believe that we voted on for your proposal was to keep the delegate system. I don't have the exact.
Keep the delegate
But
system with some changes.
Yes, exactly. And then you could write sort of how you would envision that and why you'd supported it, but it got voted down. That would be okay with me. Like I said, hopefully we will not have pages and pages of dissenting opinion. Like I said, if anybody has thoughts that they'd like to share on stuff that voted, please keep it concise. So we do not have pages and pages of written.
Yeah,
stuff.
I'm not, there's, it's a 6-1 vote. I don't think I'm going to sway any public opinion by any magic words. I would just like it to be public record within this organization.
Right,
So if someone comes and asks me in 2 years,
Mhm.
oh, you ran that task force, oh, I hated what they came up with, or oh, I loved it, oh, I didn't agree, and I don't need to explain it to anyone. They come and read it, and I like it to be public record.
So, and that's my thought. We'll have the recommendation. If you want to have a dissent, you can have your dissenting opinion in there.
But yeah, I agree with Brendan. Yes, here are recommendations. And here's our report. We have to send a report. We can't just, here's 3 recommendations, see ya,
Right.
so.
Exactly. So that's my thought for the report. I'm going to talk to Ashanti and Israel about setting up the recommendation section of it, and we'll all have a chance to read it, obviously, before it goes out, and offer suggestions, changes, whatever. I'm hoping it's not going to be an overly super long report. I'm not envisioning something that the board is going to have to take a long time to digest. But so that's sort of where things stand with that. The other thing that I want to discuss, and I have no idea exactly how we're going to handle this, and I don't even know that we need to figure this out now, but we send our report to the board with our recommendations, assuming the board accepts some of them, accepts all of them, whatever. The next thing that we'd have to figure out or discuss is that whether any of us or all of us would participate with the bylaws committee in drafting the language. Because I know that the bylaws committee, Alex has mentioned to me that like, you guys are going to help us draft the language to make sure we get your intent. I don't know if that's something we want to do. It's something we should discuss. Do all of us want to participate in that? Do some of us? Do none of us?
Should we wait? Should we have a quick meeting and have, again, it doesn't have to be a 2-hour meeting, but with Ashanti and Daniela here as well?
We
And I think
certainly
it should
can.
happen
and-
after. It should happen after the board votes.
Right.
After
and
the
that-
board meeting.
That
yeah.
was my thought. We can wait. We
That's-
don't
I
have to
see.
discuss this before the vote.
Okay.
We can wait until after that, and then we can sort of work that out however we decide to do it.
And we could all vote for Adam to do it.
Please don't.
I will, let's put this on the record, so that we're completely transparent. The language of resolution 11 is that the task force will make recommendations. They will be considered by the board, and then they will be shared with all society members 120 days before the convention, with an opportunity for feedback and suggestions, right? That has to be part of this task of the post vote.
Right. So
And
that
then- And then one more thing, a proposal will be brought before the delegates at the next closing business meeting. The language is not clear on who brings that proposal.
so
You need to address that, because
Well, so-
somebody who may not like what we did will challenge you on that language.
well, so for the public open discussion, that's going to be at the board meeting, right? That's going to be the meeting where people get to weigh in. So it gets brought to the board.
No,
After.
No, after. It's gonna have to, and it's 120 days before, and there has to be an opportunity for feedback and suggestions.
Right. We present to the board presents to the membership.
I will tell you what I will say. I will say, we have to give the public ample time for that. That cannot be that it happens at the board meeting on the 23rd and that is that. It cannot be that. We have to be open and transparent. We have to give the public opportunity for feedback and suggestions. What I'm going to recommend as a board member is that we give people time until the next, until a certain period that makes that 120 days, right? We're going to make 120 days deadline that we make the recommendation. That's that.
Right.
Then there's a comma. There has to be an opportunity for feedback and suggestions. There's a comma. Doesn't mean that is 120 days, but it has to be reasonable. There has to be a time for that. Otherwise, you're opening yourself up to people who are going to challenge you on the language of Resolution 11.
Well, all we have to, I'm trying to find it, the exact language of it.
Here, I'll send it to you. It's right here. I've been looking at it.
So my understanding is we have to give people an opportunity to contribute 120 days before, right?
If you look at the language, it says, and pardon me, I have to go get power cord before it dies. The language is the recommendation shall be considered by the board and shared with the society members at least 120 days.
Yes.
So on the 23rd, that's when it's going to be shared with society members, right?
Well, with the board.
With,
That's
yes,
with the board
If it-
and shared with society members.
right.
Because there's an open
Right.
meeting. So it's being shared 120 days before the convention.
Right. And it says within,
However, there's a comma, which means that an opportunity for feedback and suggestions has to be further than only April 23rd.
well, right, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that it has to be. It means that it can be.
listen, I'm just going to tell you, there are other lawyers watching. And if I were them, I would tell you the same thing that I've said. The letter of the law is the letter of the law, not the intent.
Right, and
Let me get the
I would
PowerPoint.
I
I
would
gotta
say that as long as, I mean, we could have a meeting for open discussion. I mean, I'm not necessarily opposed to it, but I would say is that, you know, it has to be shared with society members 120 days before the 22 convention. April 23rd meets that, and it says with an opportunity for feedback and discussion. There is certainly an opportunity for feedback and discussion at that board meeting.
From who?
From anybody can go and participate in that board meeting and provide feedback and discussion. If it's on the agenda, anybody can.
So there's not going to be, so that will be the way it's shared with society members, is just the April 23rd, not that in addition to another way, in addition to a mass email.
You could do a mass email. I mean, I'm not
It
necessarily
should
saying
be.
that I'm opposed to any of those other things. What I'm saying is that I think that the April 23rd meeting meets that requirement. Because
I think sharing with all members has to be posting it on the website and sending it out to all
Yeah.
members.
sure.
To share, say you had to show
But-
up at a board meeting on a Saturday doesn't mean
Right.
share to me.
No, they're not
but
saying you
but
have
there
to.
is
and it-
feedback. But there is feedback. There
Yes.
has to be an opportunity for the public to then give feedback.
Well, again, at the board meeting, there would be.
There
Certainly would be.
Listen, if you say that on the 23rd is the only day that the public gets to get the recommendation,
Mhm.
hasn't read it, they haven't read the document, and you want to use that day for feedback, you're gonna get in
Yeah,
trouble, Adam.
the 23rd is the 23rd is 168 days from the convention. So that gives us another 40 days to actually get it in SPJ leads, put it up on the website,
Email
and
to all
let
members.
the board get emails and
Yeah.
let the membership actually read the bloody document.
Sure, and that's fine. I would also say though that, they're not going to have the bylaws language in front of them, but the bylaws language is going to be made available to everybody within the deadline for the convention anyways.
Yes,
So-
however, you need to get the feedback so that the bylaws considers the feedback.
Right.
Listen, Stacie is right in one aspect. This is a radical change in how we do business. We have to do this process right 110%. No room for margin of error. There are a lot, I shouldn't say there's a few people who know the rules better than us who are going to challenge this. And the only way we stay above board is by saying we were acting reasonable. We were giving the public as much potential as possible. It's not just feedback that doesn't matter. It has to be feedback that the bylaws committee actually considers. They have to consider it. You got to give them time. We have to be able to say, this is reasonable. We acted this much better. Otherwise, Adam, all the work we did is going to be for naught. I'm just telling you.
So.
I mean, if you
my-
guys want to have another meeting, we certainly can.
Yeah.
No. This is not, Adam, this is not about between now and April 23rd.
No, I understand that.
This is post
After-
April 23rd.
If post April 23rd, you guys want to have another meeting, I'm not opposed to it. I'm just saying, I don't think it's necessarily required, but I'm not opposed to it if that's what you guys want to do.
Well,
it-
I'll tell you what I want to do
Yeah.
or my interpretation of this, right? So a recommendation considered by the board and shared with all members. So considered, I don't know, I guess that means they read it. It doesn't mean they get to change it, I guess, right?
No,
Considered by the board. So that, I guess that means they have a meeting about it, right? Shared with all society members. We seem to be on the same page about what sharing means. We seem to be well ahead of our deadline, right? With an opportunity for feedback and suggestions. Nowhere does it say that the task force opens up an opportunity for feedback and suggestions. I have always interpreted this to mean that they're giving feedback that the board's going to consider, and perhaps the bylaws committee is going to consider, because bylaws are their purview. But this doesn't mean that we have a public meeting and we invite
Right.
people to talk to us, because we're done.
We're done.
What are we
Our
gonna do?
our
at that
mandate is done on the 23rd.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's absolutely correct.
And I don't think that that's what Israel was pointing out and sort of carefully making sure we do this correctly. He wasn't saying the feedback comes to us, but
So
we need
what-
to provide that, we need to alert all of the members, and just that one meeting, April 23rd, is not sufficient.
Wouldn't
And I
that
guess,
be-
and what Brendan is saying, yeah, that is not, we were not tasked with that.
Right.
We would like to see that done. We weren't tasked with that. So
But-
it is,
but the-
we could reiterate to them that, hey, we need to get this out to all the members of.
So that would be in the hands of the board to
Right.
hold an extra meeting then.
That's right.
Okay. I mean,
That's
I'm completely fine with that, but the way I look at it is however the board handles it, once we're done, once we give them the recommendations, it's in the board's hands at that point.
Right.
So if the board wants to hold an extra meeting, that's fine by me. I'm just saying from our perspective, like we're done, our mandate's met.
Right.
That's
Correct.
what I'm saying. So
And-
I have no opposition to the board holding another meeting if that's what it so chooses to do to get feedback. I'm fine with that.
And what I'm telling you is, as a board member, what I'm going to tell the board is exactly what I just told you.
Okay.
I'm going to say to them, here's what we did as the task force. Here's what I said to the task force. Here's how I'm reading resolution 11, right? I'm going to say the exact same thing that Stacie said. This is a radical change. We're not going to sugarcoat this.
Mhm.
It is a radical change. So I'm going to recommend that whatever little we're saying we need participation from the public, we do it a lot. And as Dan just said, we're at 160 days. We can surely, as a board, give it to the public, open it for comment for 30 days, come back for an emergency meeting, let again the public know we're having an emergency meeting to again revisit this. And then at that point, the board, after taking public comment, after opening public comment for discussion, board votes, goes to bylaws, and that's it. The bylaws takes over.
Completely
If they
fine
want to
with
hear from you, Adam, at that point, they could address you as the chair.
Sure.
But
So
that's it.
I have no objections to any of that. That's all fine. And I'm glad we've squared that away. So my question though is once the board does all of that and votes on the recommendations and it goes to bylaws, if the bylaws committee wants the task force to help out with drafting the language so that they can make sure that they stay within our intent of what we voted on, how do we handle that? And again, we don't have to decide that right now, but we can if we want. Do we want to have some of us go and help the task force? Do we want to? I really hope it's not just me. But how do we want to do that? I want to make sure that we are opening that up for discussion and that we're all on the same page on whatever is
Not
decided.
trust that the bylaws committee will get it right.
I'm not saying I don't trust it. I'm saying that Alex has mentioned to me when this is done, the task force will help us draft the language. Correct. We hadn't discussed that, so I have no idea.
Yeah.
You might
I
have to.
don't
vote if
think
we
I don't think I
agree.
can be part of that as a board member.
Okay,
I think that's too much of one board member to influence the bylaws.
sure. And it
And I would
doesn't
be-
have
I
to be
would be
all of
concerned,
us. I'm just
yeah.
saying it could be if we decide that task force member A and B are going to go assist with this, that's fine with me. I just want to make sure that like we're all on the same page and that it's not like, oh my God, A and B were working on this and none of us knew about it.
And
So-
I do think that we would need to know roughly what, before anybody can say, yes, I would do this, or no, I absolutely can't, what the time commitment would be.
Right.
I think we need a rough idea of
Yeah.
that before we can say yes or no to.
And you've got to be comfortable with the legalese that comes with with bylaw language. Because just one little slip of a word and it
Yeah.
may sound perfect, but it could wipe out everything.
So here's what we could do. I mean, because again, we don't have to decide on this tonight. I just want to make everybody aware of it. We could wait until the board decides what recommendations they're going to move forward and which ones they're not. And then, Alex will probably ask me again, and I could put us all into like an email chain and we can discuss it with her as a group. Does that make sense for everybody?
It works for me.
Yeah. So That's great. This has been fantastic. It's been a long process. We did a lot of work. I appreciate all of you sticking with this. I'm especially proud that we're all still friends and we all still respect each other.
We are? Oh, okay. Yeah, right.
Mute Dan.
You know, and I'm relieved that our aspect of this is done aside from the report, which we can maybe have spoken too soon. But I look forward to seeing you all in DC. We should all get together and have a drink and celebrate.
And celebrate Stacie's birthday.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Celebrate. We're all gonna get together.
Okay,
for that.
well, it's on Friday night, you said? Friday is your birthday? That's
October
Friday?
27th, which is the first day, so it might be a Thursday. It's the first day
Oh.
of the conference.
It's gonna
Yeah.
be great.
We're
There's a
staying
lot-
up late on Thursday, Dan.
I stay up late on Wednesdays. I work all day Thursday.
Well, this will be your day off. So again, you'll all be getting an email from me. I'll probably reach out to you guys. I'll reach out to you guys to make sure you got it, and we can start working on the report, which will hopefully be easy and painless.
All right.
Good
So our
job,
next step,
everybody.
we're just waiting to hear, you're going to do your part first, and we're waiting for you
Right.
to, okay.
Which I'm hoping in the next day or two. I'm gonna hope, you know, like I said, it's not gonna be very long. I'm hoping it'll just be like, you know, this is how the task force started. This is why. This is what we did, and then we can go into the other stuff together. And again, there'll be opportunity for all of us to be like, Adam, what the hell were you talking about? So on and so forth. So this has been a super long meeting. Thank you all. And we will talk soon.
It's
Okay,
been a
Adam,
pleasure, everybody.
once this all gets rendered, I'll send you the link again for the video.
And please send
All
it
right,
to
brother.
John as well.
And I send it to John as well. Yeah.
Cool. And Israel, you sent your videos to John.
That was a long time ago. He's got everything.
I know he's
Yeah.
only posted one video so far, so
Maybe
that's gonna
the
have to be
videos
done.
have gotten lost with the members. I don't know.
I will say that Hillary wants to see last week? Yeah,
Yeah,
last
can you
week's
send that?
meeting.
Okay, I can send it
That's
if
fine,
she want,
yeah.
if you want me to send the raw that I have, I could just send that straight to her. Because I'm actually storing it in the DC chapter's Google account.
Yeah, she does want, she asked me if you were going to send a link. She's in San Tropez, maybe? You won't get a response back from her right now, but she would appreciate it within a
Okay.
week or so.
When
Okay.
when I sent her that video, when she asked for it, Dan, I just send her through WeTransfer. I send her the whole file.
Oh, no, I mean, the thing is, all I do is I drop it in there and then it's a link and then they can download
Oh,
it from,
perfect. All
you know,
right.
through Google, you just download it yourself.
Are these meant to be public, like on SPJ's
Yes.
They're
website?
supposed to be. So
They're supposed to be.
John Schertzer posted our first meeting, and that was stored in the SPJ Zoom account. But after that, we started using other ones. So that's why I was making sure Israel sent his.
And I did send mine to him and I said, did you get it? I have an email from him saying, yep, I got it.
They haven't posted, they've only posted the first one. But again, as far as I'm concerned, as long as, like, we want them to get posted, but as long as we're sending them to him, we're meeting our requirements.
No. It's more than that.
Again, we can debate on that.
You need to send an email to John and say, John, if you
I
don't post
don't
these to
dispute
the
that.
public,
My point,
you're in violation of public notice.
that's fine. What I'm saying though is that I don't have access to the SPJ national Zoom account, or not Zoom account, YouTube, so I can't go on there and post them ourselves. And I don't
I
think
get
any
that.
of us can.
But he needs
So-
to know he's not
understand.
serving the members.
No,
He
I
needs to serve the members.
I understand that 100%. So
I'm
um,
kind of surprised actually that only one has been posted. I didn't know that, and I'll take accountability for not asking that.
I didn't think
sooner.
any of them had been posted. I was actually surprised that one had been posted. So anyways, again, this is my faith in headquarters staff. I like John. I like everybody who works for SPJ.
You realize we're still recording.
I understand that. And I hope he's watching.
I'm on the public, Dan. I'm on the public being frustrated with how our members are treated by the executive director.
Yep.
In
So
public.
anyways, before this goes.
This would be all the stuff I'd be cutting out of the IC talks, you know?
No, it's all public comment. It's all public.
So thank you all very much, and we'll talk soon.
Okay, take
Hey,
care
all
all.
right. Thank you all.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.